Konohana Jin was walking on the peak of an unknown mountain, where a blizzard of snow came across his whole body. At that moment, he wished to wake up if he was in a dream, since he noticed that he was not familiar with the place he was in. However, he remembers his older sister who always blames others under the guise of justice. He also remembers one time, their aunt used to bring them food, but since the cooking was not tasty, his older sister forced him to eat the food, and if he didn't, she would guilt trip him, that their aunt would be sad. That is her sister. She always blames other people. That's why he wanted to live without her anymore. Furthermore, Jin got his driver's license, and his older sister ordered him to fetch or take her somewhere, along with her friends. While he was driving, Jin was irritated because his sister seemed to have no patience for their destination, while on the other hand, her friends were quite at the back of the car, while waiting. At last, they reach the fireworks display event park. The three suddenly get out of the car, but Jin quickly goes to the trunk where their luggage and food were placed, and since those bags were too heavy for her sister, she asked him to carry those heavy luggage. He took a small bag, but his sister's boyfriend suddenly grabbed it, since it was too light to carry. Then they turned around and waved to him. Jin can't do or say anything but to look at them walking away. Since he made it that far, he calmly grabbed the luggage and did it alone, because soon, he can be free from his manipulative sister once he enters the university. He follows the paths of his older sister's route and starts to walk, but then he notices something strange in his surroundings. He looked around and found he ended up in the parking lot, but the car was gone, and looks like he was lost. He asked himself if he was dreaming, then he started to panic, but he calmed himself and took his phone, but to his surprise, his phone had no signal. He decided to walk down again, hoping to see the city. As he continued, he ended in a beautiful river, so he decided to walk down again until he reached the sea, and to his surprise, he saw a mountain, but he was confused because he walked a lot, but didn't see any mountain climbers. However, he didn't pay attention to his situation because his stomach started to churn with hunger. He was lucky that he had the cooler, so he opened it and found food for 4, so he started to eat alone. While eating, he observed that there was no trash on the sea and started to ask himself if there were a beach without garbage. He started to worry about the fact that he might not be able to come back in time, since the place was too wide, and he needed to prepare for spending the night in that area. Luckily, he brought a cutter, so he started to shave off some branches of trees, while thinking how his tyranny older sister forced him to that firework display, where in the first place, he was invited by a friend to go camping on a mountain stream. Furthermore, he was having a hard time trying to make a fire. He regrets that he postponed watching a survival program where he can use it for escaping on his older sister. He tries to rub and grind again until his hand feels sore, but he needed to do it since the place would soon be covered in darkness, so he tried again until smoke came out on the wood. He grabbed some small piece and blew it until he made a fire. Night came. Jin was exhausted. Luckily, he brought his jacket, so he couldn't catch a cold. He rested his tired body on the ground, thinking he might be in a dream, and could escape until his eyes gave up. Afterwards, Jin woke up by the sound of the bird, though he was still dazed. He got up on the ground, thinking what happened the other day was not a dream. His eyes widened when he saw that the fire he made the other night was burning out, so he quickly took a piece of wood and placed it on the fire. Afterwards, he grabbed his bag and decided to leave the area and go in the opposite direction, hoping he could find the city. But he was irritated since insects kept biting him. As he continued to walk, bullets of sweat were on his face while his eyes widened when he noticed that the land was surrounded by the sea and the place seemed like an island. He collapsed on the ground when he realized that he was alone on the place, so he started to shout, trying to call if someone could hear him, but no one answered. Jin gathered his strength and stood up and continued to walk. He was sad, wondering why he was in that situation where he was just forced to go to that place along with his sister and her friends to see the fireworks. He continued to walk until he noticed that the sky soon got dark. Jin was bewildered if he should pick up dead tree branches or not, but in the end he realized that he needed it to get the fire burning. Furthermore, on his way, he was mesmerized by the beautiful waterfall. While looking into it, he realized that it was the river source, and somehow lucky, he continued his walk and decided to gather dead tree branches again to make fire, because the smoke produced by it might be discovered by someone. He hoped he could go home sooner, but it looked like it was not easy, since that place was an island. He decided to start to chop wood to build a house for him, until he created and finished the wall. Afterwards, he took the last bento he had, thinking of finding food tomorrow. While eating, he heard some movement on the back of his house, so he looked for it. He thought that it was a rabbit or a wild boar, so he said that he should hurry to fortify the wall. Morning came. Jin woke with the realization he wanted to take a bath. He goes to the river and starts to swim. Then, he observed that there were fish. He grabbed a piece of tree branches and splashed it on the water. Since he was alone, it was easier for him to catch one. He immediately put the fish on the fire and cooked it, but as he bites, the fish is tasteless. He needed to add some salt, but the problem is, he was on the island. Another problem is he was running out of clean water. He was certain that he needed to drink the water on the river bit by bit until he got used to the taste. Then he laid his body on the ground, thinking he should continue to build the house by tomorrow. Later on, Jin continued to build his house. He covered the ceiling with twigs and leaves, but he realized it would turn dark inside. He was confused if he could use some plastic bags on the window to get some light outside. Afterwards, he made fire again. His accomplishment for that day is to dig a drain and pile up stones as a preventive measure for the rain. Then he noticed smoke came from ragged rock on the ground. He decided to dig it, since the rock is handy and gets cold at night. Later on, water came. He used a stick to hold the stone and put it in the fire to make it hot, and threw it on the water. Then he sat on the little tub that he created, but he needed to be careful, because the stone below is breaking. However, Jin thought that he was getting tired of eating grilled fish and crabs. He needs to create something like pot to change his food. Later on, even though he wanted to stay on the water, he needed to get out of it as he started to shiver. Night came. He created a small pot where he cooked a few stewed dishes. Afterwards, he stood in front of his house and was delighted by what he saw. Though it's not that beautiful, yet it's a success for him because he was the one who built it. After a period of time, before he knew it, snow had started to pile up on top of the mountain. It's hard for him to gather food and walk on the island because of the snow. One time, he passed by a tree where he saw a mushroom, but he ignored it as it might not be edible. He went home afterwards. Even though he made a fire, he still can feel the cold. Sooner, the snow will come into his house. Jin was unhappy since it was difficult to catch a fish. He wondered if he could make some dried fish and seaweed, but he knew it was for a short time of survival only. He fell into deep thought and looked in the sky, asking himself if he was going to die on that island. He hugged himself and felt loneliness. However, his eyes suddenly widened as a ball of light rushed towards him, asking for forgiveness for involving him in that situation while summoning a hero. Jin was confused. He didn't know what that thing was or what was happening. Jin was shocked. The ball of light asking for forgiveness for getting him involved while summoning a hero. That word hit Jin hard, so he quickly asked the ball of light to return him. But the ball of light can't do it, since Jin can only go in that world just before he dies. The ball also said that it can still feel Jin's lifespan. He was disoriented, asking himself where in the world he was. However, Jin is in the world with magic and swords, but Jin couldn't believe it, the fact that he didn't encounter any monsters or dungeons like he sees in the games. So he asked the ball of light if it was a spirit, but the ball claimed that it was not just a spirit. He used to be a god. Since it summoned a hero, its spiritual power as a god decreased significantly. Its purpose for summoning a hero is to connect Jin's world and that world for a moment. But no matter how hard the ball of light explains to Jin the situation, in the end he still can't understand. But when the ball mentions his older sister's name, Haruka, it caught Jin's attention. He quickly asks the ball if the hero was his sister, as it mentioned earlier that there are 3 heroes and one of those was his sister. He concluded that the number the spirits mentioned matches the number of people between his sister and her friends. He fell on a deep thought, asking if he was supposed to die, but the ball clearly says that it can still feel his lifespan. Before he could find an answer, different people suddenly showed up in front of him. Then the ball and a man were arguing over something. The ball claimed that the situation was not its fault, but Jin thought that it was indeed its fault. However, an older woman interrupts and asks Jin who of them will he choose to be his guardian deity, because it was impossible for Jin to return to his world. The ball insists to the man to let Jin choose later, but the man just glared at the ball and said that the summoned person is gifted protection, and Jin can bestow a skill or item that he desires. Then the man introduced himself as Van, and his power is a fire attribute. Then everyone introduced themselves as Rudale of earth and stillness magic, Kadal as ruler of flora and order, Ish can oversee water and healing, Palau for the land and harvest, Mishto for land and wind as well as romance and caprice, and a beautiful woman named Halafa who can oversee love and beauty. She has a puppy named Richie whose power is ice and darkness, but Richie doesn't have any power that can bestow Jin. On the other hand, the ball of light interrupted them and said that Richie was on the verge of vanishing, which is why they all argued. However, Jin couldn't believe that he could have their power. When they asked him who he preferred, Jin didn't hesitate to answer that he chose them all. Kadal explains to him that his lifespan is insufficient to receive their power, and it can weaken the divine protection that's given. The power and the strength that bestows him will contrast and could have different effects, but it looks like Jin couldn't understand their explanation. He is somehow clueless. But when Kadal told him to think about what he wanted to do, and they would bestow him the necessary power for it, Jin fell on a deep thought. Afterwards, he told them that to be able to live comfortably without any restriction, without getting involved with his older sister. On the other hand, before Jin could continue, the ball interrupted him and told that Haruka was doing good. Her sense of justice is strong because it chose her. Jin was annoyed, but then his eyes widened and asked them if his older sister also received abilities and what they gave to her. Jin was upset and didn't want to get involved when they told him that they gave Haruka all the magic. On the other hand, Kadal explains to him the power that they can give, but the hero-killing thing caught his attention. Then Kadal passes him a sword that can cut almost anything. Van also gave him a bag, a powder that aids vegetation growth. Jin was happy to receive too much. Kadal and the others were grateful to him, because even though he was suddenly taken in that world, Jin had no complaints. On the other hand, Richie suddenly looks at Jim, so he asks them if he could take it with him. Even though Van warns him that Richie's power is almost gone, and the only thing it can bestow him is himself alone, he doesn't mind. Afterwards, Van used his magic to transfer Jin to a safe and comfortable house, since the abilities that he had were compatible. The latter grabs the puppy and closes his eyes, thinking he will live in peace and comfort because that's all he wants. In an instant, his eyes widened when he saw a huge house in front of him, a beautiful scenery where the temperature is warm. As he stood in front of the door, door, he was shocked to see his own reflection. His face changed. He thought that it might be because of the youthfulness of the gods. He was so grateful and felt like he was their son. However, he entered the house and was amazed because of the large space. He checked the food storage and was delighted with the stock of food. Everything he needed was there. He checked a pail and found that there were salmon swimming in the water. However, because he ate the same thing on the island, he couldn't help but feel hungry just by looking at the stored food. He decided to take a bath first before eating, since he was filthy. So he went to the tub and felt happy because it had been too long since he had a proper bath. Later on, his peace vanished when he thought he didn't know how to polish the rice, so quickly stood up and tried the skill that he received from the gods. He went into a room and evaluated how to use the turban. He was delighted since he can now understand how to use it, then cook the rice. He looked at Richie and gave food. He thought it bestowed itself on him, the power and protection he can only give. So he said that he should improve the power that he receives. He prepared sirloin meat and dried cabbage. It's a weird combination, but he can't wait to eat soon. Afterwards, food was cooked. He prayed first before he took the first bite. He was happy because the food was now tasty with salt and pepper, unlike on the island that he used to eat tasteless food. After he ate, Jin let his body lie on the bed. He can feel safe since he doesn't need to worry about the fire going out, nor to be frightened of the beast coming. But since it's been a long time since he slept in a soft bed, he can't fall asleep. Konohana Jin quickly used to live in a different world. He's been there for weeks. He did nothing but eat. Time passed with just him alone in the mansion, thanks to the healing that he receives because his body feels healthy. However, he found amazing things after he received abilities from gods. Through appraisal, he can make basic dishes based on the main ingredients. The skills were designed to be convenient, in which he can make any recipe he knows with any ingredients. But his knowledge on food is limited. He wanted to try different cuisines that can be found in that world. One time, he wanted to cook ramen, but since he has no wheat to mill, he changes his mind since he has dried bonito and kelps. It's simple, yet he can turn the fish into a meal. While eating, he remembered that God gave him a map and money, but he didn't know where to go. Then he remembered some place and looked at it on the map. He uses his transition magic. In an instant, he landed on the Kanem city, where monsters dwell. Adventurers also tend to gather where monsters constantly appear. It's a perfect place to earn gold and become stronger by defeating monsters. Afterwards, a guard asked him for identification and toll. He was astounded when everyone looked at him. When he told the guard that he was an independent knight, he was confused if it is because of his appearance or the brands of clothes that he wears. So he bought clothes to blend in with the people and decided to go shopping. He looked in different stores and found them low quality. Then, he found something that he could give to Richie. Afterwards, he thought that the money that he got from the gods should almost be the same as how much his sister got. On his way, a potion caught his attention. He uses his appraisal magic to know the materials needed for the potion, so he can make one. Then he saw a food stand. He wanted to try the food, but when he appraised it, he saw bacteria that could be dangerous. After that, he saw a fine grape trellis, so he went inside and bought some farming tools. He told the old lady that he didn't need change, but instead, a twig from the grape trellis. The lady let him take some. However, Jin suddenly asks her if she has some weapons. The old lady guessed that he was a new adventurer, so she advised Jin that a sword and armor is a good start. She even recommended picking the leather armor. While thinking about what to buy, Jin looked around the store and was amazed by everything he saw. Afterwards, he left the store and waved goodbye. He looked at the sword that he bought. He was wondering if it could swing easily. However, though a bit expensive, he bought a goat monster leather armor, a waist pouch, and a bag for holding caught monsters. Night came. Luckily, there are inn nearby, since the gate of Kanem closes in the night. Transition can't be used in the city, and he could get in trouble if he is caught. On the other hand, he felt a bit awkward because he was worried about Richie, so he decided to go home and come back again to visit the city. Morning came. Jin went back to Kanem and registered for the Adventures Guild. He paid for the fee and requested an escort to study the adventures basics. While he was reading and waiting for his adventurer's tag, a man suddenly interrupted him, asking if he was the one who requested an escort. He needed an escort since it was his first time to battle, and also for his security. However, the man introduced himself as Dean, a 2-starred silver. Jin thought that Dean was an instructor. Dean laughed at him when he introduced his name, in a stutter tone, as Jean, since their name was almost the same. On the other hand, a girl interrupts their conversation. Dean looks pissed off at the girl who happens to be his sister named Amil. They are arguing over a guy who relies too much on the adventurer instead of the guild. Because of the mess, Jin looks like wanted to go home, but a lady named Kana interrupts the siblings and asks Amil to stop relying too much on her brother. She also explains that it's Dean's fault for spoiling Amil too much. Then Kana turns to Jin to apologize for showing him something improper. On the other hand, Jin was familiar with the situation. He remembers his older sister, so he tells them that he will withdraw his request for an escort. Dean was shocked while Amil was delighted when she heard Jin. The latter turned to Kana and withdrew his request. Dean wanted to say something, but Jin ignored him. Kana told him that the charge for his request will return, but Jin refused. Instead, he asks to take the adventurer's manual with him. Afterwards, Jin left the place. He was dismayed because for him, every sister is a landmine. He promises himself that he won't endure being in that kind of connection in that world again. While walking, he was surprised when out of nowhere, Mishito suddenly popped up in front of him, and Jin is the only one who can can see her. She can hear the latter's thoughts, but when Jin is only consciously talking to her. On the other hand, Jin thought that the separation magic looks like it will take effect without stopping. He plans not to hesitate to use it on his sister to cut their connections. Since Mishito can hear his thoughts, the latter explained to him that they can use it whenever he wish, and they will get stronger too. But expanding the target of too much will weaken the effectiveness. She also said that if Jin uses it on one target, the people around that person will stop talking about him too. And since he was trying to affect many people, the effectiveness will lessen. Jin thanked her for the information. Then Mishito suddenly disappeared. Later on, Jin finally reaches the demon forest. He showed the guard his passes, then he let him in. He took the manual that says a rabbit monster will appear right before the entrance. According to the library, the weak monster is called hornless, due to their horns being tiny. Because of what he equipped and no escort, he can likely go against some without dying. Then he raises his hand and his all-kill blade suddenly appears. He hit it on his storage skill. After that, he prepared himself for any attack. But to his surprise, an ordinary rabbit suddenly appeared in front of him, though it quickly jumped away from him. He didn't notice that there was another rabbit standing on his back. It suddenly jumps to attack. Luckily, he senses it and dodges the rabbit. It was a hornless rabbit based on its appearance with a tiny horn and blackened skin around its eye. When the rabbit was going to attack again, he quickly slashed his sword and the rabbit was cut in half. At first Jin was shocked, but happy that he defeated it by a single swing of his sword. He put the rabbit on the bag while thinking what would happen to him if he used the sword he bought from the shop. He boasted that he can still defeat the rabbit with a normal sword, even if it's a horned rabbit. Afterwards, a beautiful grass caught his attention. He appraised it and was surprised that it's a medicinal herb that can use as a potion ingredients. Then he kept it in his storage. Then he saw raspberries and gooseberry. Unlike on the mountain on the island, he finds that forest fun and abundant, so he appraised it again and put it in his storage. He saw a mushroom that looked like one on the island. He appraised it and was delighted when he found out that he could actually eat it, but his happiness vanishes when he senses something on his back. At first he thought that it's a rabbit, but it's much bigger. He turned around and was shocked to see a large horned bear. Jin couldn't believe that he actually defeated the large horned bear. He was staring at the bear lying on the ground, but his body jolted when Mishito suddenly appeared. Looks like the latter was curious, since it was his first time to be an adventurer. Then Mishito apologizes to Jin, whose face looks irritated because of her sudden appearance. Later on, Jin asks her to look around, since he wants to try again, but his jaw dropped when Mishito told him no need to walk around to find monsters, since he can use his magic and the ability to search. He was given that ability, but he hasn't paid attention too much, so he used exploration. Then he found a rabbit with horns. He told himself that if he used that ability from the start, it would have been easier for him to find more monsters. However, Mishito reminds him to imagine what kind of magic he wants to use, then draw the attributes he needs. She continues that the attributes that he possesses are Van's fire, Rudel's earth and stillness, Pal's land, Kadal's greenery and vegetation, Isha's water and healing, Hafaral's light, Richie's ice and darkness, and of course her light and wind. On the other hand, Jin closed his eyes, ignoring the presence of the rabbit, who was rushing towards him. Then he opens his eyes and slams a powerful wind for his opponent. The rabbit fell on the ground. Jin looked at his hand. He couldn't believe that he actually did it. He was so thankful to Mishito. The girl waved at him, but before leaving, she reminds Jin to get to know the other spirit, and they will lend him their powers. She also added that people who can use magic are rare, so he must use it with care. Then in an instant, she vanished again. Afterwards, Jin decided to sell all the monsters that he defeated to the guild. But the problem is, how can he get those monsters in the guild, especially the large bear? Later on, Jin went to a huge house. He asks the man to assess his catch for trade. The man dropped his jaw in shock when he saw how huge the monster Jin was carrying in his back. He couldn't believe it, since it doesn't suit Jin's face that he could do it. On the other hand, Jin thought that it would be better to walk around with a sharply cut section exposed. That would be an unbearable sight in his previous world. But now that he has mental fortitude, he was able to drain the blood of a rabbit or cut a bear in half, because on the island, he was at his limit handling a fish. However, the man caught his attention, saying to put his bag down. The man was amazed how great his catch was, since all of its pelt can be used. He praises Jin for not just being strong, he also has skills. He also added that those monsters would fetch a higher prize in the Adventurers Guild than on their trade guild. Jin was fine with that. He thinks that the siblings are in the Adventurers Guild, and he doesn't want to go anywhere near them. They close their deal, and the man asks him to wait for quarter an hour. However, Jin asks the man if there is a place where he could learn how to make potions. The man replied that the headquarters next door has recipes. He also added that magic potions are more likely with the alchemist. Some things are only handled by individual guilds, but most of the knowledge they want to spread is generally entrusted to trade guilds. Jin told the man that he was going next door for a while and did the appraisal because he was going to sell everything. He was reading a paper where all kinds of recipes from imperial court dishes to baking a brick are written. He concluded that the potion itself seems easy enough to make. Because of the divine power, he seems to have more physical abilities than ordinary people. He can heal his injuries with the recovery magic, but he wants to make it look like he is using potions to heal himself. So he decided to get some tools on his way back. Later on, the man came back asking him to check a magic stone. It looks like Jin was shocked to hear hear the word, so the man waved his hand to catch his attention. Then the man showed him the magic stone. On the other hand, Jin was surprised because the magic stone was in the book guide. It looks like he was dismayed, since he thought that it was as big as a ping pong ball. However, magic stones are rarely obtained from the corpse of a monster. The reminder of its spirit that remained in the heart turned into a gem. It was expensive. Nevertheless, the man told him that it's a red spinel. The redder the spinel, the more expensive it is, so he congratulated Jin for getting one. Then the man asked him if the magic stone was also for a trade, because with the size and color, it can be used by someone strong in fire magic. Jin decided to trade it. He thought that even if he didn't have it, he could still use magic. Afterwards, he left the place with joy. He decides to walk around the place and eat before the night falls. He goes to the market and his jaw drops. He wanders around and finds that a lot of bread offered are sausage, sauerkraut, or ham and cheese sandwiches. He stared at the sausage and appraised it. He was contented that the sausage looks well grilled, so he bought it and quickly put it in his mouth. He commented that it was a little greasy, since there are a lot of adventurers and calories seem to be a priority. He continued to walk around and saw dried fruits. He swiftly put it in his mouth, but he was dismayed and his face turned sour. Since it was too sour, he had an idea. He could boil it with sugar and use it to make candy. Maybe he could also use those in meat dishes. However, he saw a kid buying something. He noticed that it was brown sugar. He also notices the weighing scale that they use. It was nice and retro. Later on, he smelled of sake. He was wondering what the legal age in that place was for him to be able to drink alcohol. However, as he continues to walk, he finds himself enjoying the scenery, the food, and the tools that they use. On his way, he saw many people gathering. He was curious, so he walked closer to them and took a peek. His eyes widened and his jaw dropped when he saw a whole roast pig. He came to the salesman and found out that it's a sandwich in bread. Out of curiosity, he bought one since it really looks so tasty. He quickly took a bite and he was not mistaken. It was delicious. Though the bread is disappointing, the pork is fragrant on the outside and juicy on the inside. After he finished, he walked away thinking that he will get a pig some other time. After that, he went home. He greeted Richie. He told the latter that he wanted to eat more food, but maybe it was because of his stay on the island that made his stomach smaller. He also talked about his accomplishments. He sighed then looked at Richie, who seems not listening or ignoring him. Then he lifted his hand and a light came out of his hand. The latter was not sick, but his existence itself is getting fainter. He heard that healing doesn't work, but he was still using it on Richie. He hoped that he would get better soon. He bid his good night and went to sleep. He cooks food and prays before eating. He thought that since he was given language, he wants to read books from that world. He also thought about the cloth in the Canum. It has poor quality, so he would not buy it again. After he eats, his next destination is the royal capital. He was amazed how huge the place was. He went to a guard and asked for a guide map or any person who can guide him, since it was his first time in the city. The guard gave him a simple guide map. He also told if Jin wants to shop, the trade guild can show him around. They might even take him for a ride and have him buy all sorts of stuff. He also said that if Jin went straight ahead, he'd see kids hanging out in the square. Pay those kids any amount and they will guide him around, but it could be hit or miss. Jin was delighted, so he gave the guard a payment and told to keep the change. Jin turns around and is ready to leave, but the guard holds him. The guard gave him information about a kid named Leon with ash blue hair. Afterwards, he turned around and left. He goes to the royal capital of the neighboring country in case something goes wrong, but he was surprised that the city is small. The buildings are all connected to each other. Then, he found the square that the guard mentioned. He saw the well and saw the man with ash blue hair. He walked closer to the man and asked if he was Leon. He was shocked when he saw the man closer. The man's eyes were like a knife glaring at him. Jin was scared, but he didn't hesitate to ask the man if he could guide him around the city. Jin explained to the man that the reason he was asking was he heard from the guard that he does guided tours around the city. The man yelled at him. That's why Jin was scared. The latter felt something was off, and the guard tricked him. When the man told that he was not, Jin lifted his hand and said that he might have mistaken the man for Leon. On the other hand, the man changed his expression. He told Jin that he was free to guide him, so he was indeed Leon. Jin finds his looks quite friendly. Nevertheless, Jin asks Leon if there is a must-see place in the city. The latter told him there is, but civilians cannot enter, and the must-see place that Jin was asking about is the view from the top of the stronghold. Jin was confused, so he asks Leon for any recommendations about clothing shops or dining halls. The latter frown and think. He then told Jin to eat quickly because he has an acquaintance who runs a clothing shop that's famous in its own way in the capital. Then they started to walk. Jin was behind Leon. He looks at him thinking, why does the latter make such a scary face? As they wander around, he notices that the walls of the houses are stuck close to each other, so he asks Leon why. The latter told him that besides the fact that the land within the city walls is limited, the width of houses along a road is taxed, so sharing a wall to split the TAS half and half is typical. It looks like Jin was curious about the city, so he asks again what else is taxed. Leon said that there is city tax, transit tax, city tax transit, and also glass tax. Jin dropped his jaw when he found out that there is also a tax on the glass. Leon explained that glass windows are luxury items. In the private houses, Jin will hardly ever see them, which is why the latter didn't see a lot of glass windows even in Canum. To continue their conversation, Jin asks Leon, what's the largest building in the the square. The latter responded that it was the bot of spirits. Jin thought that it is related to how spirits like it. Plants are grown in the inner courtyard. It's a beautiful place with clean water running at all times. Jin concluded that the people in that world have faith in the spirits. Leon suddenly looked at him and said that he should be showing him places like that. Jin was delighted and concluded that Leon doesn't seem to be a bad person even though he always frowns. It's just that he is not suited for guiding tours. On the other hand, they both are surprised when an old man calls on their way. Jin was shocked and confused at the same time when the old man suddenly rushed towards Leon, calling him young miss. However, it looks like Leon was hiding something. He turned around and looked at Jin. He was stuttering when he introduced the old man that he is the Alderhide family's butler. But Jin was still confused since he clearly heard that the old man called him a young miss. However, Leon turned again to the butler and asked why he was there. The butler was about to answer, but a woman suddenly intervened, saying someone was after him, so he must quickly leave the city, and told him to get on the wagon. But Leon refuses and says that there's no reason for him to run away. The old man explained to him that there's a strategic retreat, but Leon was shocked when the lady suddenly punched him in the stomach. The butler quickly held him and told Ms. Lilith, the lady, that the young miss was hurt. The latter quickly apologized to Leon. Then Ms. Lilith yelled at the butler, asking why he didn't use a potion. The butler answered that the young miss had left the Alderhide family. She can't spend the family fortune. Jin was sweating. He stares at Leon's stomach and observes that it was soaking. He was confused about what was happening. Then Lilith noticed that the people were looking at their way. To prevent the uproar, they have to leave the place. But before they could do it, Jin offered Lilith a bottle of potion. He was the one who made it. Though it's a trial product, he carefully checked it with his appraisal, so it should be fine to use. On the other hand, Lilith was clueless who he was, so Jin introduced himself and told that Leon was showing him around the city. The butler added that he saw them on their way to Thames' shop. Lilith fell in deep thought. Then, he suddenly grabbed Jin's wrist and decided to take him with them. Inside the wagon, Leon was still in pain. The butler let him drink the potion that Jin made. It looks like the potion was effective, but Jin was uneasy since he never tried it for himself. The latter was surprised when Lilith thanked him for what he did. He didn't mind their gratitude. Instead, he wished they let him go, since he was not interested in the clothing shop anymore. Afterwards, Leon woke up and abruptly asked where he was. The butler told him that they are in a wagon. He said that he was pretty sure he had vanished from the family, but he doesn't remember doing anything that would make him a fugitive. Lilith winked at him, telling that Leon has always been honorable. She also added that his younger brother was uneasy because he was still alive. That sly little fox, not only did he unjustly banish Leon, he also made other charges against the latter. Nevertheless, Jin was still confused about what he just heard. He wanted to avoid trouble, yet he was curious about why someone who was injured in a family feud. At the same time, they call Leon a young miss. Nonetheless, the butler suggests Leon to retreat, but to his shock, the wagon stopped at the Thames shop. Leon asks Thame to assist Jin with clothes. He also apologized to Jin for their unfinished tour. The latter dropped his jaw in surprise, since it wasn't the time to apologize. He asks Leon if it would be better to leave soon, but the latter ignores him and continues to talk to Thame, then turn around and talk to the butler. On the other hand, Lilith apologized to him, then introduced herself as Lilith from Household Divaland. She gave Jin a ring. She also added that if he encountered any problem, he could come and look for her, but she advises Jin to stay away, since she's going to be troublesome if Jin was around her. The latter takes the ring. Although he hesitates, he asks the name of Leon, or the young miss for them. Lilith told him that Leon's real name is Leora. His jaw dropped when he learned that Leon was a girl, and her real name was Leora Alderhide. Lilith explained to him that Leora was flat-chested, looks tough, and is stronger than most men by a long shot. That's why a lot of folks think she's a man and call Leon. He was speechless and couldn't react because he also assumed that Leon was a man. Before the three left him, the butler also apologized for involving him in the affair. So, they prepare a remuneration for the clothing and ask for his silence. Jin was confused since he was new in the city and didn't have any acquaintances aside from them, so he promised the butler not to tell anyone. Nevertheless, he looked around the shop and noticed that the shop doesn't have any clothes. To his surprise, there are three ladies surrounding him. They quickly measure his body, and that hits him. That shop was a bespoke tailor shop. That's why there are no clothes hanging everywhere to display. Later on, he got all the clothes, but he felt tired. He covers himself in a wall and looks around so that no one notices him. He quickly put all the clothes in his storage. Then he used the exploration magic to look for not so popular places. Afterwards, he was able to buy sheets and bed covers from the fabric shop beside the clothing store. Jin's next stop is the bookstore, but he suddenly remembered that the butler told him a good place for a meal, so he changed his mind and decided to eat first. Then he went to a bookstore. After a period of time, he goes home. He lifts his hand and releases a light over Richie to treat it again, but the latter swiftly jumps from Jin's bed to its own bed. Afterwards, he sat to start reading the book he bought. Later, he realized that it was already dark and it was hard for him to read using just a candle. He was bewildered if he could make a lamp since he doesn't have alcohol for fuel, but he does have rapeseed oil. Then he remembered what Mishto once said, to imagine what kind of magic he wants to use, then draw the attributes he needs. Then he lifted his pointy finger and said light. In an instant, a light came from his pointy finger. He was delighted since it it was too convenient for him. His day was a sudden wave of activity, but he got a lot out of it. He remembers the scary face of young Miss. It seems like she had her priorities a little skewed, but she was a good upstanding person. He doesn't know what happened to her after leaving him in the shop, but he was praying for her safety. Little did he know that Richie was awake and can sense his emotion. Jin goes for a walk with Richie. The latter seems fine after a few months of not waking up. At first, he found it hard to even walk, but now he has recovered considerably, and even his fur looks better. He was full of joy. Few months had passed, he inquired from a farmer and learned about raising livestock and making cheese. He also moved to and from the country inside the forest and helped out with the carpentry. He was concerned about the smell of the medicinal herbs, so he planned to build more dispensary sheds. Before winter comes, he wants to make it comfortable enough to stay indoors. He also plans to get on with gathering materials for the building expansion. He noticed a plant and remembered that he bought a cork oak seedling. He went outside and planted it directly on the ground. He also uses the growth powder that Deity Van once gave him, but he was astounded as his eyes widened when in an instant, the plant grew fast and became a huge tree. He once used the powder on the grape trellis too, yet he was still amazed by its power. He touched the tree and was delighted, since it would be a great raw material. Jin plans on going to Kanem for shopping. He does want to deliver the game he left in the storage. Later on, he went back to Kanem, but every time he goes back to deliver goods, he has trouble getting a room. He was thinking of renting a house there. While walking, he noticed a handkerchief on the ground, but to his dismay, he saw Emil again. Lately, the pink head, or Emil, one of the siblings, had been following him. It looks like he stood out since he unloaded a bear and potions wholesale on the trade guild, so he turned around and ignored her, which is why he didn't see her reactions. Since he was a stranger in the place, purchasing goods was a bother for him. He also established that he was staying in an inn, that's why he needed to rent a house. Afterwards, he inquired about a huge property. The man told him that the new building in Kanem is cheaper, and it's also on the good side of public safety. But as Jin opens the door, it seems that the old houses are better than the new. The previous homeowners would have made improvements so that it's more comfortable to live in, but as he checked, it's a lousy fitting because there are even gaps in the walls. Even so, he still decided to take the house. Now that he has a house and also has transition, he could help out here and there to obtain knowledge. He was assisting the carpentry, in cheese making and in plaster work. However, Emil continues to follow him, but he too continues to ignore her in every possible way he can. Morning came. Jin was walking outside and noticed that the temp was getting colder. He didn't notice Emil on the side. On the other hand, the latter seems in trouble. She was worried that she didn't have enough coins. She turned around and saw Jin walking by. She calls for him and asks if he is going to the demon forest. She warns him that the forest is dangerous when it's cold. He was grateful as he turned around and ready to leave, but Emil seems stubborn. She didn't feel that Jin was ignoring him. Nevertheless, Emil tries to reach Jin's arm, but the latter avoids her. She also advises him not to push himself, since life is more important than money. She was shocked when Jin told him not to worry about him, since he was not pushing himself. She was trying to follow him and wanted to say something, but out of luck, she tripped and fell hard on the ground. She was hurt and wanted to cry, but it looks like Jin had no interest on at least helping her. After that, Jin reaches the demon forest, but to his surprise, in the morning he passed by the sister, and now he saw the brother. What a luck. However, as he walks, Dean notices him, the one who requested a guide. He quickly apologized and pleaded with Jin to show up in the Adventurers Guild. Because the higher-ups are scolding Miss Kiana, Jin was so confused on how it ended to Miss Kiana, when actually, it's Dean and Amel's fault. Dean apologizes and admits that it's their fault. He also added that the higher-ups said that the excellent adventurer was taken by the trade guild. Jin was speechless, but the cause was certainly the siblings. However, he told Dean that he will drop by in the Adventurers Guild in one condition. He asks Dean not to let his sister come near him when she sees him in town. He doesn't want her to follow him around, get in sight, or talk to him. Dean understood. He added that her sister is cute. That word frustrates Jin more, so he told Dean that his sister was creeping him out, and she was not his type. The latter was shocked that her sister was not her type. Then, he asked what his type was. Jin fell into deep thoughts and remembered Leora. She was a complete opposite of his sister, the one who does not wear makeup and doesn't scream, but he scolded himself and took back what he said. He wants someone who looks feminine, since Leora has no chest. On the other hand, Dean observed that Jin was in deep thought, so he caught his attention and said that he will show him a place where a rare plant grows as a sign of apology. Jin dropped his jaw and quickly agreed, because he was interested in whether those plants were edible or herbal, and he has plans on gathering medicinal herbs on that day, so it's okay to go with him. He discerned that Dean was going to be normal if he weren't such a sister lover. Eventually, they went to the place. Jin found a kinka herb, a ridiculous plant that's used to add fragrance to the alcohol that rich people drink. He was curious, so he asked Dean if it would taste good, since it has a bit of a grassy smelling. The latter don't know the answer either. He also added that Jin can get away with it with rich folks. Then, Dean invited him to catch an adequate rabbit and make a launch out of it. Jin agrees, but the problem is, he can't use transition to go. He also can't use his storage. Later on, they grilled some meat for their launch. Jin was amazed at how Dean fought. It was educational, since there were no futile moves. The latter smiled and felt embarrassed for the praise. He asks Jin if he weren't strong enough to hunt bears in succession. The latter calmly said that he relies on his brute strength, but he suddenly cursed when Dean stared at him as if he was assessing where his muscles and heights are. Furthermore, Jin was surprised when he noticed that Dean stared at a direction. He suddenly grabs his sword and looks ready to attack, but as the sound of footsteps came closer, they both dropped their jaws when they saw who it was. It was Leora. Though she looks angry, she apologizes immediately for interrupting them. Please. On the other hand, Jin was confused, so he asked Leora why he was in that place, but the latter didn't answer his question. Instead, he said that he went there to hunt a bear and draw some water. Jin hesitates to ask about his fugitive status, or is it bad to call her by her real name? However, he decided not to call her real name, because when Dean asked if they knew each other, Leora quickly said her name was Ash. Then she glared at him as if she was threatening him not to mention anything. Jin let out a sigh of relief because he was right not to call her by name. Jin was surprised when Ash bowed and apologized in front of him. She also makes sure that she will pay him with the potion. Jin said that she didn't have to apologize or pay him back, since Ash showed him around when he was wounded. On the other hand, Dean interrupts them and offers Ash some food. Ash didn't want to accept it at first, but she decided to take it and sit down with them. Later on, Dean asks Ash if she was able to hunt bears, then she should have enough for the potion. The latter told them that the inn fees are a little steep and cost a gold coin a day with just a bed and a table. The two were shocked at how expensive the inn was. She also added that the inn was introduced to her by a pink-haired receptionist at the guild. Dean and Jin already knew who it was, but before the latter could react, Dean quickly said that Amal is working hard and doesn't have bad intentions. He also blamed the inn. Jin was dismayed. He added that his relationship with his older sister is creepy. He also asked why, when it comes to his sister, logic doesn't get through to him. He was speechless when Dean said that his sister was doing her best and that she's pretty cute. But Dean became scared when he looked at Ash's side and found her glaring at him. On the other hand, Ash was serious and told Dean that there's a spirit beside his sister. A mark received from the influence of that spirit is floating above his head. The latter seems confused and says that he can't see anything, because generally it's only strong spirits. But to see a mark is a weird one. On the other hand, Jin was observing him, then let out a sigh when he saw a flower on top of Dean's head. He shook his head because he didn't know how to say that it looks like an artificial flower. He slowly comes close to Dean, who seems puzzled on what he was doing. Then he grabbed the flower and pulled it out from Dean's head. Later, the latter's head wobbled and he suddenly fell on the ground. However, Ash explains that it's a form of mental domination because the effect is suddenly cut off. That's why he lost his consciousness. She also asks Jin that aside from seeing it, he also can touch it. The latter admits that he can do it if he puts his mind into it. Usually, he can only see Richie, so that it doesn't really affect my daily life. It seems that the spirits who are called gods can be seen if they decide to show themselves. Asha commented that Jin was the first she met aside from her father. She also said that it is in their bloodline that she's able to see them, but in their family, it's just she and her father can see them, though they can't touch them. Ash told him to be cautious because that ability will be coveted. Jin told her he will be careful and asked if should they silence this one. He was thinking of leaving Dean behind, but a bear might kill him. He smiled at his own thoughts and reasoned that he didn't say anything, so he thought Ash would not find out. But something came through his mind, so he swiftly asks Ash if it's okay with her ability to see being find out. Ash calmly said that she was saved by him and Dean was his friend, but Jin denied that they are friends. In fact, that day was the second time that they met. He saw that Ash was frustrated and their thoughts were the same. In the end, it looks like she gave up thinking about what to do, and it seems like she's a person who'll get the short end of the stick. However, Ash changed the subject and asked Jin if she could see the spirit that follows her. The latter intently stared at her. He was surprised that she's being extremely pecked by the spirit bird. A bird is pecking Ash on her head. Jin asks her if it doesn't hurt her. He fell into deep thought when Ash said that there was unbearable dull pain. It seemed like a sharp pain, but something caught his attention. He noticed that the bird has a band of light around its neck, and it looks like a collar. He started to appraise it, but he was disoriented with the result. The bird was named Rue, a captured spirit from Alderhyde Rue Latentine, and its objective is to make Leora more manly. On the other hand, Ash said that the spirit was attached to her by his father when she was 7. It is for her to become an outstanding successor. She has a younger brother, but that was because her father was drunk and woke up next to a woman. Then the baby was sent to them after some time. Luckily, their country doesn't differentiate between male or female successors, as long as they are firstborn. She also said that their family has served the military for generations. His father attached the spirit with her, so that when she trained, there wouldn't be a difference between genders. On the other hand, Jin was amazed at her story by telling it in such a good light. He also asks her if it isn't strange to be more manly, but it looks like Ash didn't know the clear difference between man and woman. However, Jin apologized for butting into her family's affair. He suggested to Ash to release the spirit because it was desperately pecking her head. The latter was confused since it was originally meant to be released 3 years ago, but his father collapsed. She looks at Jin and asks if he can release the spirit. The latter hesitates at first since he doesn't know what to do with the collar, but he promises that they can try once they get back to the town. Ash let out a sigh of relief and left everything to Jin. She also said that she wants to show her gratitude, whatever the outcome is. Jin made fun of her and said that she doesn't have any money, which is why Ash told him that that she will hunt bears. Jin widened his eyes because he almost forgot that the reason Ash was there was to hunt. It looks like they have a solution. Later on, Dean finally awakens. He quickly kneels, bows and apologizes to Ash for spoiling his sister too much. The latter ignores his apology because he was under the influence of an evil spirit, and there's no difference from being a led stray. She also added that she saw in the guild, the men only had marks. There was also a person with a single petal, but since she was with Amel, Dean had more petals and he was under a stronger influence. Jin thought that a scene of men with flowers blooming on their heads is very disgraceful. However, Dean looks problematic because if people suddenly collapse just like he did, the guild will be in chaos. So he decided to discuss everything with Kiana. Then they can take Amel to the Bower of Spirits. He turns to Jin and asks for forgiveness, but the latter didn't mind it since there's no real harm on his part, so there's no need for him to worry about. However, Jin thought that Ash was supposed to take him to the Bower of Spirits to meet, so there's one in Kanem too. Since he doesn't know anything about it, he will remain silent. Listening to their conversation, it seems that each city has its own Bower of Spirits, though they differ in design. It's a place to approach spirits, but it's also where they can be cast out. Later on, Dean apologized for leaving soon, since he needed to go back in town to lay the groundwork. He also told Jin that if he needed to hunt bears, he should use a conveyor. The latter looked puzzled and didn't know what the conveyor was, so Ash turned to him and told that it was a person who transported the game that an adventurer catches. Furthermore, Dean handed him a letter where the place and time are written. He already requested one for that day, so he pleaded with him to use it. Then he winked at the two and told them that he will never reveal the fact that they can see and touch spirits. Then, they waved their goodbye. As he thought, Dean knew that he could touch the mark of spirit. Ash and Jin were still in the demon forest. They encountered wild wolves. Those wolves surround them, but Ash swiftly unleashes her sword and slams one in front of her. Jin did the same, so those wild wolves fell heavily on the ground. Ash seems to notice and like how fast and efficient Jin was, so she praises him for that. Jin smiles, but he thought he should be the one to say those words to her. Because Ash was serene, her clear and methodical sword is powerful. Unlike him, only imitate those martial arts and physical abilities from those deities. After a period of time, two people look in panic as Ash and Jin catch numerous wolves. The wagon that they had cannot carry all those wolves, so one of them asks the two to carry the other by themselves, since the wagon was too heavy for them. Each of them carry two wolves on their shoulders. They are not able to hunt bears, and wolves have a lower price than bears, but if they catch many, then it should be enough. Ash apologizes to Jin for troubling him, but the latter didn't mind and asked where she wanted to try to remove the spirit. Ash responded that she might lose consciousness longer than Dean, so she decided to do it at the inn. Jin was worried. What if Ash lost her consciousness for days? Then he asks for his butler. The latter explains her butler went off on his own. They were supposed to meet in Kanem, but she don't know when he'll arrive. Jin assumes that Ash was ripped off because the butler takes his eyes off her. Then an idea comes to him. He asks her if it's okay with her. She can come to his house. Later on, they went to his house. Ash finds Jin smart for having a good taste when it comes to the house. He was glad that she liked it as he repaired his rental house. He smelled his own clothes and realized that he smelled like the wild since he carried those wolves. Then he asks her if she wants to take a bath, and Ash agrees. There are also places where they have bathtubs, but when he did the appraisal, he was apprehensive about the sanitary conditions, so he changed his mind. He fetched water from the well to fill the tub. Later, he told Ash that the toilet is behind the last door and he'll be upstairs. On his way, he should use the time for transition to change his clothes too. He also had to prepare a guest bed on the second floor. He also plans to have a bathtub in that house too. Afterwards, he prepared a tea and asked her if they could start. Ash agrees and says that she'll be in his care for that time. As Jin sat in front of her, he stares at her and finds that the spirit of the bird is continuously pecking her. He touched the bird and realized that it can't seem to stop pecking on its own, even though it looks exhausted. He decided to remove the collar, but it looks like Ash got hurt, so Jin apologized. Ash wobbled her head, then she collapsed. Fortunately, Jin catches her, but his hand landed on Ash's chest. He was speechless. It was proven that her chest is definitely flat, which is why he couldn't feel any excitement even a bit. After that, he lay her on the bed. He observed that the bird was still there. He told the bird that it can't take revenge on Ash for being constrained. It looks like the bird understands him, which is why he rubs its head. He stood on her side, waiting to be awakened. He was glad that it went easier than expected. He doesn't know when she'll wake up, so he should let her stay in his house for the meantime. He plans on furnishing the third floor too, so it doesn't look out of place. He went shopping, then went home to check on her. He prepared some food in case Ash woke up. Afterwards, he went home and swiftly apologized to Richie for not taking care of him. The puppy seems didn't mind his disappearance and looks excited to see him. He concluded that Ash will never wake up anytime soon. However, he was surprised when he saw Mishto along with Rudale and Pal. He asks them why they are there. Rudale apologized for their sudden appearance and asked for a request for him to make. According to Pal, a spirit fled to his place and asked him to give them names. Mishto, who looked worried, added that her sister is using a large amount of magic, but the way she uses it is so reckless. His sister can't see spirits, so it might be unavoidable. As Jin expected, his sister has an obsessive yet fickle nature and can do something rash within a year. Mishto continues that a lot of the little spirits have been used up and disappeared. They heard that Namina already warned her, but since that one tends to get carried away easily and can absorb power, Jin was confused about who Namina is, but later on he realized that it was the ball of light who brought him into that situation. He didn't like that ball since it can absorb power and it's not proactively stopping her. Anyway, Mishto stated that if Namina regains her power and his sister can see spirits, she was worried that Namina could dominate every one of them thoroughly. Rudiel interrupts and says that they knew Jin doesn't want to get involved with their situations, but the spirits are so noisy and they couldn't stand it. Well, it's obvious since Rudel's dominion is stillness. Pal also added that the actions or directions of the hero shouldn't be limited too much, but if the situation continues, it will have an impact on many places. Jin was confused and asked what kind of impact did Pal mention. Mishto suggests that Jin should see the spirits for himself, so she asked him to look outside the window. Jin follows her and closes his eyes. As he opened his eyes, it widened in surprise because his window was covered by the spirits. He was scared. He looked intently and asked himself if he wasn't seeing them or if he was living in the midst of all that, but it was good for him that he wasn't able to see them. On the other hand, Mishto told him that since his sister, who has dominant power, affects them even just by being near her, they came and gathered where he is, who has liberation power. Jin was clueless on what he should do. Pal suggests giving them names. Those spirits won't be subject to anyone and can scatter freely, but according to Mishto, that all depends on whether the magic of liberation is stronger than the connection between the person and the spirit. If Jin created a bond beforehand, the spirits would probably choose him. He was dismayed and hesitant since the amount of spirit was too many, and it looks like it's impossible to give them all names. So, Rudiel explains to him that numbers or whatever, any name is good. If the spirits don't like it, he can just rename it. In that case, any name without thought is alright. Anyway, if the spirit likes another person, then they can receive a new name at that time. Jin understands, but he finds contradictions about it. For a spirit, on the order of the person they like between him and his sister. Rudiel also added that those spirits which he gave name will lend their powers to him, and if he wants, he can just give them numerical numbers. Jin finally understood, which is why Mishto was delighted that Jin would help. She also added to head outside and start so that it clears for every spirit that Jin's house cannot be entered without permission. They went outside and Mishito asked those spirits to form a line so that they could have their name. However, at any rate, Jin thought that giving them names is necessary for his pleasant life, though he doesn't know how long he'll be able to live like that once his sister can see spirits. He starts to give them their names and write it on a piece of paper, but later on he felt exhausted. Since spirits have numerous numbers, he gave up and asked for a little break. His head fell on the table, but a spirit kept rubbing his cheek when suddenly he remembered Ash. He quickly stood up and used his transition magic. In an instant, his back encased him. He let out a sigh of relief, but little did he know that Mishto followed him. He was surprised and at the same time irritated when Mishto out of the blue asked him who Ash was. But before he could answer Mishto, the bird rushed toward him and said something. Mishto was surprised, then asked him if that bird was a spirit too. They went to the house and showed her Ash, who was still lying on the bed. He explained that he freed her from the spirit bird, but since she collapsed, he needed to keep her safe. Mishto widens her eyes and says that it's a maiden's crisis. Jin was wondering if she clearly see Ash as a female, so he asked her how scandalous it was because he had no intention of laying his hands on her. Mishto winked at him and said she didn't mean it that way. She closed her eyes and lifted her hands over Ash's body. After that, she also touched her chest, which is why Jin was shocked by her action. Mishto laughs at him, claiming there's no need for Ash to go to the toilet until she wakes up. Since she was asleep, who will go to the toilet with her and wash her cake after using the toilet? He apologized to her since those situations didn't come to his mind. However, Mishto announced that maybe Ash will wake up by tomorrow night. Then she asked the name of the little bird on his shoulder. He replied that when he appraised it, it said that it was Rue. Mishto took a closer look at the bird and said that its contract has been terminated, so a new name can be made, and the little one wants him to name it. Jin looked at the bird and thought of a different name that suited the bird, but none of it fit it. Aside from that, his naming sense is bad, but when he called it Azu, the bird seemed to like it. Azu is blue in Italian. He took it from Azuri, but if the bird likes the name, so be it. Jin asks Azu to watch over Ash. He thought that both of them were constrained under a contract, but they were together ever since. Ash might feel sad if the little bird disappeared. After that, Jin asks Mishto to go back to his home and continue naming those spirits. He uses his transition magic, then in an instant, they arrive. But to his surprise, even Kadal and Ish were in his house. Then he continued naming those spirits one by one until he was done and exhausted. Then Jin asks for a light, although Rudiel wants to stop him, but it's too late, because in an instant, a bright light covered the surrounding area. Even if he closes his eyes, it's all white. Mishto was delighted by the sight, but Rudiel was irritated since he already warned Jin and told to wait. Later on, Rudiel ordered him to open his eyes, because he already added darkness to weaken the light. According to them, though small, there are a lot of light spirits around. The effect is they are lending their power towards him. Pal reminds him that it's dangerous not to remember his limits. He has to imagine it exactly and convey it to the spirits. On the other hand, Jin learned again. He thought just saying light was enough, just like he did when he was reading a book, but he must imagine it, just like Mishto once told him. Furthermore, he felt hungry, since since it was time for dinner. They are all staring at him. He doesn't know if he should ask, but he invites them for dinner. But to his dismay, the deities want different food and an unbalanced diet. Later on, he made himself a butajiru, and it tasted good. He was delighted, but when he looked at those deities, he was not sure. Though it looks terrible, it looks like they like their food, especially Ish, whose salt is certainly unique, though it was just a plain salt. He was eating it like he was eating a piece of cake, and he was worried about his health. On the other hand, Jin was curious if the spirits can really eat food. Mishto explains to him that human-like spirits can eat various things, but they can't taste them. Those that aren't humanoid vary depending on their attributes: the water of morning or evening dew, the fire of a bonfire, or even the scent of flowers. Jin finally understood. However, Richie comes to him and wags its tail, so Jin asks the puppy to wait, since they were eating. But to his surprise, Rudale furrows his brow, then looks at the puppy and calls him as Wolf of the Darkness Ice. He also added that Richie was once his master, so he was curious on what Richie was scheming this time. To lighten the mood, Mishto said that the puppy was cute, but they couldn't even get to it before. She apologized because they didn't trust Richie. Jin was speechless, so Kadal explains to him that before Richie lost his power, it was a powerful deity who shook the heavens and split the earth. He gratified his desires and scorned all counsel. All who stood in his way were beaten to death. Jin widened his eyes and exclaimed that Richie was an alpha dog. Mishto had no idea, so Jin explained that an alpha dog is the #1 leader. The dogs are supposed to follow the leader of the pack. If there's one who doesn't, they become stressed and ferocious. They must live by acting in accordance with human rules. Kadal interrupts that Richie is a spirit and a wolf, and not an ordinary one. Rudale was speechless when Jin told them that wolves are the same. However, Kadal warns him to be careful, since appearance can reflect their personality, but that isn't always the case. He also added that Richie could speak and was highly intelligent, so he better be careful. Jin looks at the puppy and can't say anything, but for him, intelligence and instinct are different. But for now, Richie is just a cute puppy for him. Anyway, he looks at those deities and thanks them for their concern. He also says that he will think once Richie starts speaking. Furthermore, he was embarrassed when Mishto suddenly held his hand and told he was a precious person for her. Then they waved goodbye. But Rudale was still on his back, looking at the little puppy making fun of him. He even called it the novel and solitary wolf. Then he suddenly vanished in irritation. Jin heard him, but ignored. Then he takes a bath and falls asleep. Morning came, he went to a pottery town to order a bathtub. Then he decided to buy some tableware afterwards. He went into a shop, and the old man introduced himself as Malcolm. When he saw Jin, he knew the latter had an idea for new merchandise. However, Jin gave him a paper where an idea for a bathtub was written. To his surprise, Malcolm told him that he recently received an inquiry from a noble in the neighboring country about a tub. The noble also said that they wanted a clawfoot bathtub, and he was starting to make a prototype. Jin was certain that it was his sister and her 2 friends. He was full of joy when Malcolm told him that even though he had never made one before, he was willing to help him develop it. After that, he wandered around thinking his separation magic. News about him shouldn't reach his sister, but he never thought that they would get involved like that. Later on, he went home. He was sitting on the side when Ash awakened. The latter widened her eyes and abruptly got out of the bed. Then he thanked Jin for taking care of her. Jin was worried if she could move or if she was hurt. As per Ash, it's her back that hurts a bit, but it was because she's been sleeping the whole time. Ash looked at the window and realized it was already evening, but she was surprised when Jin told her that she was sleeping for 3 days, so she apologized for all the inconveniences that she caused. Then she turned her gaze on the bird. Jin told her that he gave it another name while she was sleeping, and the name is Azu. Ash suddenly smiled when she heard the name. She told Jin that there is nothing to apologize, because if the spirit accepted his new name, it means it likes him. Little did she know, Jin was aware of her changes. Without wrinkles, Ash was indeed beautiful, which is why Jin became curious about who she really was. Not just a beautiful girl, rather a beautiful young man. Girls like Amal won't be able to leave her. Furthermore, out of the blue, Jin lets out a sigh and warns Ash not to get tricked into someone's bed. The latter was confused, which is why she asked him if he did trick her. But it looks like Ash had no idea of what Jin meant, since she was unconscious for 3 days, and there's a space on her bed that fits him. So the latter only said that he did not trick her, and she was safe with him. Later on, Jin said that he will go to prepare some soup for her, since she didn't eat any food for 3 days, and once she's eaten, she should rest more. However, Ash seems wary, and asks if it's alright to stay over, but she quickly apologized when Jin told her that he was not heartless to kick her out in the middle of the night. Besides, she should hurry to get better for her to be able to get back the rent money that Emil scammed at her. She agreed with him since she also had to pay Jin for letting her stay. Morning came, they went into the guild and saw Ash's butler. The latter talks to him while Jin stays still, while observing other people. He was aware that there are few people who have spirits following them, but there doesn't seem to be a man with an artificial flower on them. Later on, he saw Dean. The latter invites him to treat him to a pint as an apology. Then he was surprised when he saw Ash and the butler. The latter bowed to them and introduced his name as Note. He also added that he was a previous butler, but now an adventurer. He has a connection with Lord Ash as something of uninvited attendance. On the other hand, Dean didn't mind Note and started a conversation regarding his sister, but Jin widened his eyes when he saw that there was another spirit on his shoulder, and it looks like Dean is always attracted to spirits. Furthermore, they sit with a table of food and some beer. He said that Amel went to the Bauer spirits to have her spirits cast out. A lot of people in the guild collapsed, but now it's a bit more settled. He also added that it's going to be a sore spot for the guild, so he asked them not to speed the news too much. Amel is going to start again from the bottom. If she can't fix her spoiled attitude, she can't go back to the reception. On the other hand, Ash said that a Pullman's preening can happen to anyone. If it wasn't intentional, one will be given a reprieve to start over. Even if it's a prank to a spirit, there are instances when it can become a horrible tragedy. For that time, it was only because Dean, who is a close relative, noticed and dealt with the matter, and it was handled leniently. Jin noticed that Ash was giving Dean a warning, and it looks like he understood, because if Dean says something about him and Ash, it will jeopardize the magnanimous treatment and the understanding of the people around them. He thinks Ash was like an airhead, but she was actually smart. Dean said that Ash's money will be returned soon, then take a sip on his mug. He also said that if he stays with his sister, he'll probably spoil her, so he decided to stay at a lodging house. He finds it quite a place, so he asks them if they want to introduce him to the manager. On the other hand, Note said that they were looking for a renting house post-haste, but they want to request a 2-bedroom, so he asks Dean if it's possible for a short stay. Furthermore, Jin takes a sip on his mug. He heard that the legal drinking age in that world is 15 years old, but he still felt a guilty pleasure for that. Dean calls his attention and asks if he would like to accompany a mid-level adventurer once. He added that the adventurer is not strong enough to stand out, but he's someone who fulfills requests for certain. Jin agreed since it was a lot of help for him. Then they clear to meet up the next day at the same time. However, Dean became serious and warned them to be careful and not to fall for anything weird, since they were both strange in their place. He pointed at Ash and ordered her to unwrinkle her eyebrow if she thought it was weird. Then he turned to Jin, who's not agree, so he let out a sigh, since both of them have good looks, and weird ones will surely approach them. They didn't know that his weird sister had already heard all their conversation. Jin wakes up with the presence of Richie. They look at the window and discover that it was already snowing. He prepares food for himself and eats quietly. He grabs some bread, and as he tasted it, he was delighted since the sourness of the plum jam really goes well with cheese. It was already winter. He remembered his life on the island, and he found it horrible. It was full of hard work, especially when winter came. That's why he was always grateful for everything that he has now. After he eats, he cleans his mess and is ready to meet Dean with the adventurer in Canaan. But to his surprise, it looks like Note and Ash were waiting for him at the guild. The latter wanted to ask about the potion fees that he used when Lilith punched her. She seems irritated when Jin slightly laughs at her and reasons that he didn't give it to her and expects compensation. So to be able to close that matter, Jin told her that once she found a place to live and was stable, he'd come and ask for it. But even after she found a house, he was sure she would have a lot to buy for, and it seems that Jin didn't want the compensation they wanted to give. He gave the potion to help and nothing more, and she understood it. On the other hand, Dean arrives and quickly introduces him to the man on his side. He was Letze, so he also introduced himself to him. But Letze was not great at speaking formally, so he asked if it's okay if he spoke normally. Then they shake hand, and Jin felt something unusual on the man. On the other hand, Letze called Dean and said that he didn't say that Jin was a good-looking one, that he can't stand that feminine look. It seems the man wanted to back out. Dean didn't agree, since he already screwed them up. He even mentions Ash, who was gray-haired and got a beautiful face too. He was questioning Dean on why there are so many beautiful faces around the guild. They didn't know that Jin could hear them. He blames those deities for being beautiful after inheriting their abilities. Furthermore, Jin calls Letze to go, then he asks Dean if the man has a complex about good-looking guys. Dean just laughed, since he didn't know the answer. Anyway, Jin's first request to have an adventurer to accompany him is finally happening. They wandered around the forest with Dean when Letze started to talk. He said that he hunts rabbits at that time of the year, since their fur and meat are in season. When he got large bears and sold them to the rich, it sold a lot, but small bears on the other hand don't. He preferred to hunt rabbits, since they are easier than the small bears that need a great effort to catch. He always looks at the bulletin board to check the price of the meat. If it's too cheap, he will just sell the fur and go home. Horned monsters are hard to sell because their meat is tough, but their fur is quite strong on its own, so the fur sells pretty well. Jin was surprised when Letze continued to say that lately, the rewards for hunting bears have declined. That is because of him and Ash. It's their fault. Furthermore, Letze continues and shows him which direction his prey has gone, by looking at how the grass has disturbed and split. Because if he looks closely and observes, he can find the traces of animals. His eyes widened while his jaw dropped on how professional and cool Letze was. Letze even shows him the ground where most of the rabbits' hind limbs move in unison, while their forelimbs move independently, and it was significantly different in size. Jin looked at the ground and asked for those paw prints. In response, Letze told him that it normally belongs to a fox. They walk in straight lines, leaving paw prints like those in the ground. With those kinds of paw prints, it's hard to tell whether it's a monster or not. Jin was still amazed on Letze because he can provide an answer in everything when it comes to hunting. If it's him, he just uses his search magic and leaves everything to his sword. Additionally, Letze also explains that a regular fox or rabbit can hunt with a short bow, but that's not possible for the monster. Then he took a bow on his back and aimed in a direction. He releases his bow and shoots. He got the rabbit down. Jin was speechless on how amazing Letzi was. Then they went back to the guild because next time, he was going to show him how to hunt a fox. And afterwards, they went to sell those fur. Jin finds it irritating since the old lady and Letzi were so talkative. After that, they went for a drink. He was grateful at Letzi since he learned a lot at him. However, Letzi finds him weird, so he asked Jin if it's okay to learn his method than Dean's. But he felt irritated when Letzi insulted him for having thin arms. That's why Dean interrupts before something bad happened, then says that it was a treat, so they have to drink more. Afterwards, Jin went home and looked at his arm and found it really thin, so he decided to eat more protein and train his muscles. Later on, morning came and went back to Malcolm. The latter was happy to see him, then he showed him the bathtub. Jin was really happy how it was done, but the problem is, he forgot how he would carry it. He wanted to take it home using the storage, but he can't use it in public. Malcolm offered a carriage, but he declined and said that he already prepared something, so Malcolm quickly wrapped it. Afterwards, they carry the bathtub in a place where there are no people passing by. After Malcolm and his companion left, he quickly took out his storage. Though it's difficult to use, since the tub is big, he still manages to include it in the storage. Afterwards, he went home and started to dig and create a wall using bricks. After some time, his bathtub was already in place. He looked around the toilet and was satisfied with his work. However, he went at the door when someone knocked and was surprised when he opened it and found that it was Ash. She was holding a present for him since she was moving in. Jin was happy but surprised when Ash told him that her house was next door, so the latter quickly apologized. She explained that it was Note who found the house. She didn't remember telling him where he lived yet. Note found one next to him. Jin said that it was just a coincidence, but Ash expressed regret. Nevertheless, Jin could hear Ash's thoughts, and he heard that she was happy while talking to him. He wanted to ask when she started to feel it, but just invited her to get inside, since it was cold outside. He offers her drinks and thanks her for the gift. When he opens it, he can't help but abruptly put some fig tart in his mouth, since it looks delicious. And for him, those fig tarts are the best he had in the city. She mentioned that Note recommended it, so Jin finds the man a competent butler. Later on, Ash asked him if he made something, but she was bewildered when Jin told her that he made a bathtub. She furrowed her brows since it was weird for a bathtub inside a house. It's easier for Jin to show her, so they went into a room. Ash drops her jaw in amazement when she sees it. She looks around it and is still astonished because he has never seen something that lovely. Jin restrained her from touching the wall since it wasn't dry yet, but once it's dry, she can try it out. She turns to Jin and asks if it's okay to call Note. The butler came fast and made an apology for intrusion. Ash showed him the tub, but his mood changes when Ash says that Jin allowed her to try it once it was ready. The latter looks embarrassed since he forgot that Ash is a woman and a young lady, so it doesn't look decent if he lets her use the tub. He was speechless when Note told him that as a servant, he should refrain Ash from doing so, but he, himself, was also curious regarding that bath. After the bath, Jin was lost for words when the two also went to his kitchen. It appears that they wanted to take a tour of his house. They found it strange when they couldn't smell any foul smell from the kitchen. However, the butler notices that the toilet is walled off, so the smell from the sewage doesn't leak. Then Jin couldn't find the words when Note asked him on which workshop he asked for the wall, but in the end, he told him that he was the one who made it. Note was in disbelief. Then he asked Jin if he thought of publishing or registering his invention in the guild. When Jin said no, he ordered him to register it quickly. Later on, money came in like crazy. Jin looked breathless and exhausted while walking in a lake. He went there to make some beddings for Ash and Note, but it looks like he needed a coat for himself too, since it was too cold. He wants to go home as soon as possible, so he abruptly took his bow and arrow with a rope and targeted 3 geese with horns in the lake. He was fortunate that he caught one. He just needed to pull, but to his surprise, numerous geese were drawn to the smell of blood, so he quickly uses his magic to transfer and is able to escape. Afterwards, he makes a fire to warm himself a bit, then heads out again on the lake because he needs to hunt more. Later, he went to Ash's house to ask about their house move. He was bewildered when Ash suddenly came out and said that it was quite good. He happened to be around to help and guide the workers, like a foreman, but a lot of craftsmen ended up dropping by her house, and it was getting quite crowded. On the other hand, he handed to Note his housewarming gift and told that it was futon beddings. The latter was confused because it was too light, and to his surprise, the bedding is made from horned geese feathers, and it's quite a luxury product. Ash quickly came to take a look at the beddings. She was also amazed since the horned geese are quite wary and difficult to hunt. Note also added that it's a bit too much for a housewarming gift. Jin smiled at them and said that the only cost on his part is his arrows and rope. It didn't come to his mind that it was such a big deal for them. To change the topic, he invited the two for dinner because he noticed that they hadn't started preparing for dinner. Ash hesitated at first, but the butler told her to enjoy, and looks like he will not come. Jin didn't agree, since he also invited the butler. However, the butler wanted to say that he was just a mere butler, but he couldn't continue his sentence because Ash cut him off. The latter said she didn't care if he was just a butler, he was invited after all. She turns to Jin and asks if it's okay if Note joins them. Jin agreed since Note was really invited from the start. Later on, Jin prepared the food and they all sat down to dig it. He shows them what he prepares. His own version of fig tarts, and the roast is made with that meat from the geese that hunt. The butler couldn't believe what's in front of him, since those are made with luxury ingredients. Then, they pray first and start to dig in. Ash was amazed at how delicious it was. The butler too seems astounded. He even reminds himself to remember the cheese and honey, and the turnip soup too. However, Jin noticed that Ash looked angry when eating, her brow even furrowed. Maybe she was happy because she hasn't stopped eating. Now, he started to understand Ash's mood, so he asked her if she was happy. And he was right. Delicious foods can put her in a good mood. Later on, Jin stood up and wanted to say something, but to his shock, a spirit was rushing and fell on the food. His two visitors were surprised by his action. He was confused because the two spirits are ones he named. He even gives it a task to keep other spirits away. He doesn't know where the black spirit came from. He looks at Ash and observes that she doesn't look like she knows anything about it, so he decided not to reveal his ability to see spirits to the butler. But he was sweating and didn't know what to do or what to say because of his sudden action. So for them not to suspect him, he excuses himself to get some hand towels and another tart. Then he quickly turns around and leaves the two. The butler and Ash left speechless. However, Jin grabs the black spirit, thinking what to do. He assumes that spirits can be confined by a glass or other certain materials. He suddenly put the spirit in a container full of bran, hoping it'll be hard for it to get out. He turns to the other spirits named Rose and Khan. He praises them for doing a great job and promises to make it up later. After that, he let out a sigh of relief. It's a good thing he brought some bran to his Kanem house. He was sure that the enamel-glazed container would do, since he even tied it with a rope. Furthermore, his eyes widened in shock when the butler suddenly called his name. To surprise him even more, the butler bowed and apologized for ruining his tart and revealed that the spirit is his familiar. He also said that the name of the spirit is Quinn, a spirit of snowy nights. It usually stays a bit further away, so no one notices. Jin asks if Ash knew about it. He explained that Ash didn't know. His family, the Pardils, are a branch family to the Alderhides. A branch family is not allowed to surpass the main line. Ash only knew that he can only see spirits and didn't know that he had the ability to interact with them. That's why his gray hair and amber eyes are quite similar to Ash. Jin thought that they are already disowned from their families, so why not free their life? He didn't want to pry on their lives, so he just reminded the butler the next time he brought spirit, they needed to come in the front door. Then he opens the container and the spirit quickly jumps to the butler. On the other hand, as Jin opens the container, the butler notices the smell that's unique, so he asks Jin if it is fermentation, and the latter confirms it. Nevertheless, now even the butler knew that he could touch the spirits. Who's next? After that, Jin visits a port town and finds the place pretty lively. While the seafood is draw, that country neighbor's the one his sister and her friends were sent to. So in a way, that is an information gathering trip. Mishto and the rest of the deities were talking about how they were doing whatever they wanted with magic. Spirits who have their energy drained by humans can possess animals as a means of self-preservation. They say monsters are formed from spirits holding grudges. That's why he went to that place to see if there's been any change in the environment. He was wondering if there's been any news of a hero going wild with magic, but he was clueless on how he'd go on finding out. Nevertheless, even though he was worried, he could still hear everything, like those two people on his back, gossiping about those Schlumptas guys still raiding their fisheries. The lady said that his two boys came home injured. They also said that those guys mentioned something about a hero or saint, but they are not benefiting from their existence, and just causing trouble. On the other hand, while Jin was intently listening to their gossip, a man approached him and was trying to steal his pouch. Luckily, he caught him. Jin tightly grabbed his arm, which caused the man to release the pouch and ran away. However, Jin thought that her sister hadn't changed at all. Then he decided to go for a walk again, buy some seafood, then go home. Later on, he cooked the seafood that he bought. He took the oyster and found it delicious since it was fresh. He was not worried of getting sick because he appraised it first and found that it was safe. He also plans to bake it and marinate it in oil as well. While he was eating, Richie stood on his side. He lowers his body and asked Richie to play, but it looks like the puppy doesn't like the smell of seafood. Afterwards, night came. He used magic to put light on his pointed finger, but to his shock, the room filled with bright light. He quickly covered his eyes since he could feel that it was burning. He needed to do something about his magic. He plans to train it before heading to the guild. Morning came. He went to the magic forest and began his training. He saw a horned rabbit, so he abruptly used his fireball to attack the rabbit. It was a success. The rabbit fell on the ground. He was amazed at how powerful he was. He needs to control it properly. Then, he tried it again whenever he saw rabbits or foxes. He used his wind slash, fireball, and water bullet to attack them until he was exhausted and breathless, but he never intended to overdo it when he observed that numerous rabbits and foxes were lying on the ground. He decided to keep them in his storage then. He tried to use the light in his finger, and it was much better than the other night. Afterwards, he went to the Adventurers Guild to check the quest board and see what's in demand. On his way, he was surprised when he heard someone arguing. He stopped and saw Dean arguing to a man. He heard that the man was furious because he didn't see the three-horned monster at all. The magic forest completely deserted the monster. Based on Dean, his name was Chris. No matter what Dean explained to Chris, he didn't listen. The only thing on his mind is to find the three-horned monster, because they were formidable beasts, an indicator of the presence of black-tainted monster. If they fail to find them, they'll get much stronger. On the other hand, Jin was curious who the man was, but it rings a bell when Dean mentions the name Chris. Furthermore, Jin was surprised when Ash, along with Note, who was carrying a bag on her back, called him. Then, Chris notices him and calls him a bear slayer Dono. The latter walks close to him and starts blabbering something. But Jin, who looks pissed off for calling him a bear slayer, ignored him. He was thinking if the man in front of him was the one Dean was telling about when he first came to the guild, the one whom he referred as a noble, and the reason why the pink siblings are arguing that day. Chris notices that he was not listening, so he calls for his attention, and even calls him Evening Twilight. Jin was disgusted when he called him that way, since he was indeed a knight. Additionally, Chris offered Jin a handshake and introduced himself as Chris Eads, a 3-starred silver rank. He took Chris's hand and didn't say anything. It looks like Chris sensed that he was not interested in everything he said. So, the latter asked Jin if he would like to accompany him in searching for the 3-horned monsters. Jin was bewildered as he dropped his jaw, because it looked like he was caught up in something weird. He was frustrated and told himself that he would remember that day, because when he looked at Dean, he was trying to hold back his laugh. The latter ignores him and confirms to Chris that even himself was not able to find the 3-horned monster. The blonde hair admits it, but he reasoned out that he can't stop thinking about those monsters and disturbance in the demon forest. But Jin seems annoyed when Chris boasted that he will stake all in his intuition, since what he felt was just a gut feeling. Dean became serious and asked Chris if he had a hunch, but the latter insisted that it was intuition. Dean scratched his head. It seems that he was running out of patience, since all he wanted was to know what's on Chris's intuition. According to Chris, they could do it in the spring, which is why Jin became curious as to why Dean was suddenly so open to the idea. If Chris's intuition is something special. Then, the butler whispers to him that Chris is being possessed by a spirit, and there's a possibility that it is an oracle type. He also added that people around them can't see it, so it is being put down as a feeling of intuition. Furthermore, people who can actually see spirits are few and far between, so if it seems like you're the recipient of a spirit favor, it's taken quite seriously. Sometimes the effect might be more subtle, like being immune to sunburn, or perhaps being blessed with greater physical ability, and it looks like this blondie Chris has the ability to intuit the future. Later on, Dean asks Chris if the whole investigation was just a hunt for the 3-horned monster. Dean wanted to say something, but Chris cut him off and said that in his understanding, Dean owed the guild for the whole business with his sister, and he wouldn't turn down a request from the guild. He also added that they will only be subjugating a single monster, and they wouldn't be staying in the forest for too long. Dean was surprised when Chris said that he would like to get gold ranks if possible. Ash, who was listening on the side, was irritated when Chris stated that the atmosphere in the forest is simply not normal, so he explained it to her while Dean was begging Jin to join them for that forest expedition. Dean couldn't finish his sentence because Jin quickly responded and turned down his request, so Dean continues to encourage him to come with them. He also said that Jin could run away if everything goes wrong. He just wanted to see what's happening inside the forest and didn't intend to force Jin to do anything. Jin was curious too, so he agreed to join them. That's why Dean was delighted and said that he will also ask Ash if she wants to join the team, because for Dean, it's good to have people they know to tag along. After that, before Dean leaves the place, he tells Jin that he will send a request via the guild, and they will wait for the spring before they start their expedition, then wave goodbye. Later on, Jin went home. He was thinking that he didn't get too much information from the port city. If his sister is using an overwhelming amount of magic, that could be the reason behind the disturbance in the forest. They have been in that world for a few months. He didn't know if he'd laugh or cry because his sister's actions have affected the environment all the way out to the demon forest. He hates clearing his sister's mess, so he plans to go to the demon forest and dig a bit. Morning came, he went to the inner region of the demon forest. He wanders around to see how those spirits are holding up. He saw numerous spirits and noticed that they are the kind of spirits that gather around his house. There's a few black ones and a few that look kinda beaten up. Some of them are getting smaller or even disappearing. He was surprised when a black spirit suddenly bit another spirit. He observed that it was trying to make up what it's lost from other spirits and that it was not pleasant to watch. Healing doesn't work on spirits, as they're empowered by their contacts like Richie and the others. He thought that he had to give them names, so when a black spirit passed by him, he quickly grabbed and gave it name until he was worn out. Before he left the demon forest, he observed that spirits were not rushing to him like they did before, so naming those spirits who don't want to be controlled takes a lot of effort. It was tiring to chase them, so he aimed to continue the next day. Afterwards, he went into a house of Donoso, where he saw the father and his 3 daughters. They were delighted when they saw him, but he was still embarrassed and not used to being greeted with a hug. The father's eyes were shining when Jin showed them what he got. He brought some souvenirs, wine, whatnot, and cake. It looks like the children couldn't control their feelings toward Jin, so they rushed toward him and gave him a hug. The father took the gifts and apologized for always bringing presents for them. Shiva-san, the mother, smiles at him and invites him to eat the cake with them. Jin later on notices that they are peeling beans. It gets cold in the winter, so they do things by fire. They fix Fram equipment like that too. The latter gave them a hand, but before they could start, Shiva called them to eat the cake. They are happy while eating, when suddenly, one of the children exclaims that he will become Jin's wife one day. The mother seems happy with the idea, but it looks like the father did not. Then the parents start to argue, so Jin interrupts them and says that he was not looking to get married since they're still kids. But that word ignites the father's anger and asks if there's something wrong with his children. Jin didn't know what to say since the father was the one who's against the idea of marrying his daughter. Luckily, the children exclaimed that they will marry Jin's family family instead of him. Then they abruptly hugged him. But to Jin's surprise, their father couldn't control his feelings and suddenly rushed towards Jin to hug him too. But before he could do it, the latter suddenly kicked him in the face. However, Jin was happy with them. They have a nice family atmosphere, with everyone having fun. His family was nowhere near as nice as them. It's Chris who greeted him first when he arrived at the guild. Soon, Ash and Note arrived too. He was surprised when he saw Let's in the crowd. The latter looked down on him and said they will take care of the fighting and watch out for himself. He even said that he was concerned about his lack of experience. Dean heard it and told Letzi that Jin hunts bears, but it looks like Chris and Letzi didn't believe it. The latter pointed at Ash and claimed that she was the one who keeps hunting bears, but Ash didn't agree and said that it all started with Jean. The two arrogant men were speechless. Besides, according to Dean, the guild didn't let Jin accompany them if they didn't have some idea of his ability. Then Chris laughed out loud and said that his hunch about him was correct. Jin observed his laughing. If the spirit influenced that too, he can't help but stare at it, happily stroking his cleft chin. Afterwards, Kana interrupts them and thanks Jin for cooperating with them, even though they have greatly inconvenienced him in the past. He responded not to worry about it, since she was not the one who to take the blame. Kana also requests to allow her to examine Jin's bag's dimensions when they come back. Then she gave him something on behalf of the guild. Later on, the team left the guild and started their journey. On their way, Ash and Dean were curious about Jin's bag. They are asking what's special about it. Is it the leather, or what's the thing wrapped on the top? He told them that he made it out of leather, and the top roll is futon beddings. The two were surprised. They ask if it isn't a hassle if the monster attack. They were curious about the heaviness of the bag, and if it could be hard to throw before a fight. He explained that it was easy to detach. He made it so it can be fastened with the belts and clips. Chris looked worried when he heard it, because he assumed that their own bags would be more likely to hinder them, which is why Jin looks dismayed, because just by looking at his face, imagining the spirit is stroking gently his face. After that, they keep on wandering around the forest when a fox suddenly attacks them. Luckily, Dean quickly slashes his sword against it. Then they decided to take a break for lunch. They start to make a fire, and Jin took out his own casserole to make food. He put dried chicken, onions, and mushrooms and seasoned it with salt and pepper until it boiled. Then he took out of the bag the sandwich that he prepared, Dean drooling over his food when he saw it. So he offered that he can have some since he can't finish all of it. But to his surprise, all of them suddenly took apart and dig in. It was soft, so they asked what's coating the meat. He answered that it was a breadcrumbs. He dipped the meat in flour and eggs, then coated them in breadcrumbs and fried them. But he didn't mention the sauce, since it's a pain to make. Ash seems to like it because it was tasty. She also asks if it's chicken, then continues to eat. The butler whispers that he will mark how to make his food, but Jin reminds him to season it with salt and pepper, garlic, fish sauce, and brandy. After their lunch, they continue their journey. On their way, Jin observed how dirty his shoes were, but when he looked at the butler's shoes, he was amazed how pristine he was, even though they were walking in the forest. However, Chris looks at him and reminds them that there will be wolves on their way. They're not as strong as bears, but they hunt in packs. When it gets down to it, Jin doesn't have to wait for them. Instead, take the initiative when needed. Jin understood and thought that even though Chris was annoying, he is attentive and looks out for his member. Later on, a pack of wolves were approaching them. Wolves surrounded them, but Jin was a bit confused because most of the wolves were ganging up on him. He guesses that wolves think that he is the weakest member, but he was not. Let's say call him and look worried, but Jin was calm. He abruptly slashed his sword on a wolf rushing towards him. He continued to attack until wolves were finished. Let's say and Chris dropped their jaws when they saw him. They realized that he was actually strong and couldn't help but admire him. The latter also said that he was showing gaps in his defense to lure enemies because he was strong, but Jin was not used to being on guard. Dean commented that Jin doesn't look like a fighter, but he really is more than meets the eye. That's why Letzi looks embarrassed, because Ash and Jin make him feel not enough. Then Note told them that other monsters will be attracted by the smell of the blood, so they have to take the horns and quickly move on. So they left the place and continued to walk on their campsite. Jin built a tent for the night. Dean thought that he didn't like camping, but he was good at building it. When Chris saw it, he was totally pissed off because it looked like the latter wanted to hug him. What annoyed him more is they thought he couldn't build a tent. Although he didn't like camping, he didn't say that he was not good at it because he lived on the island for almost 2 months, alone. Ash looks at his cushion and finds that he uses moss for it. So she and Note went to look for moss since it didn't get ruined even if they stepped in, but unfortunately, Chris came with them. Then Dean told him that he along with Letzi will go to catch fish for their dinner, so he said that he will make some soup for them. He started to make tomato soup with shredded meat, chickpeas, and lots of veggies. Later, he started to make dough. He started to knead the dough. He was too focused on kneading and didn't notice that Dean came back because he forgot something. The latter saw how fast his hands were and mistakenly thought that he was doing a ceremony. Soon, he was finished, so he put it in a bag to let it rise a bit. He can actually make breakfast out of dough. Later on, dinner was ready. Jin prepares pizza, made with bacon, cheese, and some asparagus that he found in the area. Chris was astonished, since it was the first time he heard the dish. Same with Dean. He assumes that he made it with the ritual like earlier when he saw him. Anyway, they start to dig in and find it delicious and tasty. He mentioned that pizza would be good with tomato sauce. The butler seems confused about the tomato sauce that he mentioned mansions. He realized that he hadn't seen any tomato in that world yet, or at least in the area that he visited. The soup is quite tasty according to Ash. He also put dried tomatoes in it, but they didn't say anything. But his mood changes into irritation when Chris suddenly condoles him and that he would have made a fine wife. For Dean, he was wondering what type of girl Jin preferred. It wasn't his sister, which is why he asks Jin if his sister was too flat for him and holds his chest. However, Jin looks at Ash. He was sweating because it's probably not something a woman should aspire to, because she was holding her chest too. Note was in a predicament now too, since he was also looking at Ash. Anyway, Jin made it clear that he was still adjusting to deal with people, so he wasn't sure what his type is. Someone asked what he meant by adjusting his words. So while pictures of his irritating sister flash through his mind, he explains that he's been around with people that he didn't really trust. He also had a few people confess with him a few times before. Let's say and Chris understand what he's been through. They can't imagine what kind of mischief he had. According to Dean, confessions were serious, but they got embarrassed afterwards, especially when they were rejected. But Dean teases him when he learns that he was rejected when he was 6, 10, and 14. He asks if he was not cursed since it's 3 times. Let's say mutter that not all women are the same. Jin knew that he had been in a bit of a unique scenario, so he was trying to work on it. But his sister was the root of it all. The first time was a friend of his sister. Then the second and third were people associated with her sister. He thought that his sister was looking at him as if he was her property that she enjoyed teasing. It was real pain, so after the second time, he simply went along with the act from then on. Chris patted his shoulder and said to cheer up. Ash, on the other hand, remains silent and looks deep in thought. Later on, night came. Jin was sitting on the ground while holding a hot drink. Though it was already spring, it was still quite cold outside. His eyes widened in surprise when Azu suddenly landed on his shoulder, then followed by Ash claiming she will take over the night watch. He offered her some snacks, and the latter was so grateful, but not just for the snacks, even for the coat. It was light and comfortable. Then she sits down on the ground. Jin told her that he made the coat as a hobby and that she already repaid her for the potion. But he was bewildered, since Ash was in a gloomy face and looked sad. But to his surprise, Ash was claiming that he was a good man and will be happy someday. He assumed that she was talking about the earlier conversation, which is why he couldn't believe that Ash was trying to make him feel better, if he was right. To make her feel better, he told her that he met good people and that he was working on his trust issue. But he seemed embarrassed when Ash replied that she was glad to be part of the process, which is why he suddenly stood up to take a rest and leave the night watch to Ash. But before he left, he looked at her once again. Ash was a bit of a straight shooter, but he can't help but feel embarrassed when someone compliments right on his face. He finds Ash as a complete opposite of his sister, being quite open and honest. Morning came. Jin prepared food again. They commented that they were eating better out in the field than in the city, that even Dean could really go for some booze or do something right. However, it's been a few days since they left hunting, scavenging, and slowly making their way deeper in the forest. Yet, they still couldn't find any twin or three-horned monster. While they were eating their breakfast, they looked satisfied with the food. Chris even finds it nice using red ine, but Jin was curious what ine is, but judging their talks, he assumed that it is a red wine. He made a black mountain goat liver pate to go with the bread. The liver paste is made with salted water instead of milk, to remove some of the gamey smell. It should be high in iron as well as vitamins, which are harder to come by with a more protein-heavy diet out in the field. Among them, it looks like he was the only one who cares about a healthy diet. Bright him you. Out of nowhere, Chris asks him if they are going to sleep by the river that night. So he told them that they were not sleeping by the river since he made a steam bath while they were out hunting for food. He used flexible branches to make that, and it's a dome with some sheets over top. They were surprised when they found a bonfire inside. So he explained to them that he poured water over those hot stones. Chris drops his jaw in amazement. He even praised him for making their traveling comfortable, but Jin finds his compliment as a subtle one. Then he offered that he could use it, but his other companion looks like waiting for him to allow them to use that steam bath of his. So he also invited them to use the steam bath. Later on, it's quiet, and they all ended up using the steam bath. The sheets need to be dried, so they have to sleep without a cover, just for that night. When he was done, Jin observed that there's quite a lot of spirits, and it looked like they like to gather under the moon, so he asks for help from one of his spirits to keep them away from him. He's been noticing more and more black spirits. He'd like to give them names, but it's difficult to do because it would be a problem if one of his companions saw him. Morning came, they started to wander around the forest. Dean happily announced that he felt great because of last night's steam bath, but his smile vanished when he detected something, so he told the other to hold up. It's a three-horned lizard. He also told them to forget the twin-horned monster and focus on the three-horned in front of them. Let's say also added that the three-horned lizard is quite tenacious. To take one down, one would either have to go for the jugular or the heart. Even so, they should stay put until Dean gives them a word. Most of its skin is incredibly tough, tougher than the bone. Their best chance at taking it down is aiming for its throat when it looks up. Then Dean told Chris that they needed to split up, and they started to walk closer to the lizard. Then, Dean abruptly slashed his sword from its behind, and the lizard startled in pain. It's a chance for Chris, who quickly attacks its throat. Ash and Note were impressed by their tandem, but Letzi was a bit shaken even though it went fine. Now they have definitive proof that those three-horned monsters were true. For Jin, it's hard to learn from that, since it was a 2 two-man team. He was surprised when Letzi said that they are in the forest for a week or so, but monsters in that area usually don't have horns or a single horn. He was curious about how big the forest was. Anyway, since their job was done in that area, and they are quite close to the next campsite, they will head there, then turn around and head back to town. Chris asked Jin for help to take the monster into pieces. When they're done, Letza commented that he was good at dismantling. Jin was surprised because he's been practicing his hunting skills and dismantling, although it's all in his way. However, there's more and more black spirits. The area they were in is smaller than the training grounds in the woods, but there's even more spirits present there. He asked himself if the horned monster is being possessed by black spirits. There's a lot of questions, but he couldn't find an answer. Anyway, he asked Letzi if he have much lard left because he heard that those lizards taste like chicken, so he was dying to fry some. When Letzi said that there's still plenty, Jin was delighted and decided to go and find some wild asparagus while everyone was out hunting. Before he leaves, Letzi warns him not to go too far because monsters tend to stay away from fire, but if they're hungry, they're quite unpredictable. Jin thanked him and left. Not far away, he saw the last few mushrooms from the winter months. There's a garlic mustard plant as well, so he was thinking of having pasta for tomorrow. Anyway, something caught his attention, so for him to make it easier to clearly see, he used his search power. Then he was right. He saw a two-horned monster even in the distance. Though far away, they're got good noses and are quick on their feet. It is not discouraged by the fire and making a beeline towards them. He turned around and let Letzi know about it. He quickly looks for the latter and tells him that there is a monster fox coming their way, so they have to get rid of anything that smells. He covers the dismantling lizard in cedar leaves to mask the smell. Then Letzi gave him a bottle of something to mask his smell. Then they will hide downwind. Jin used his search power again. He couldn't believe that it's coming their way faster than he expected. He told Letzi that the monster was not as tough as the lizard, so he should be able to take it down. Then the monster arrives at their place. It's a one-on-one against the monster. Letzi was hiding in a big tree while Jin released his sword and prepared himself. Then the monster rushed towards him, and Jin defeated it. Soon, Dean arrives along with their companion. He saw a two-horned fox lying on the ground, and was bewildered when Letzi said that Jean took it down alone. Even Chris exclaimed in and rushed toward him, then grabbed his hands, telling his punching way above his weight, and it's amazing for a bronze rank like him. The butler along with Ash were standing on the side, and said that he was glad that Jin was safe. On the other hand, they thought it was just a lizard, but that event, it says otherwise, because those kinds of lizards don't particularly like to venture out long distances, but the foxes are different. If it's a three-horned fox or wolf, they're on their way to the town in no time. Chris also added that judging by how there was a three-horned lizard in their place, it's quite likely that a three-horned fox could show up as well, because they already saw a twin-horned fox. So Dean announced that they can't afford to take their time leisurely getting back to town, because they are going to head back first thing in the morning. Afterwards, Jin cooked food for them. He seems irritated, and asks Dean if they really like fried chicken so much that they had to go around hunting birds. The latter reason is that it's ridiculously tasty. While eating, Letzi commented that he really has eaten better than when in the city, while Note appreciates that the pasta is quite good as well. Morning came, they started their journey, and there weren't any incidents on their way home. Then, their expedition was over. Miss Kana bowed and greeted them at the entrance of the guild. Jin was relieved since they were already home, but to his surprise, Kana told them to follow her in the guild so that they can give their report. So he asked Note and Ash to bring his share of reward later when they got home. He really wanted to go home and prepare a bath. He even invites them to drop by his house so that they can bathe as well if they like. Then he turns around and is ready to leave, but Dean calls him. The latter notices that he looks exhausted, so he whispers to him that it's fine and they can talk later about the spirits. Afterwards, he arrived at his house and quickly made a fire on the chimney along with 3 spirits. It seems keeping the fire running in both houses allows for the fireplace spirits to communicate, so if anyone drops by while he is at either of the houses, he will know it. He gave an order to a spirit to let him know if any guests showed up. Then he uses his storage to get water and starts to heat up the bathtub. Later on, he uses his transfer magic and heads out to his other house. He calls Richie, who was lying on his bed. The moment the puppy saw him, it quickly jumped in excitement. Jin rubs his head and says that he was dirty, so he will take a bath before they play. He laid his exhausted body on the bathtub. He had to wash up 3 times to get all the dirt off of him. Then he played with Richie, but after a while, the spirit said something, so he transferred again into his other house. He quickly went to the toilet and found that the water in the bathtub was getting lukewarm, so he drained it and replaced it with some more hot water. Then he opened the door and apologized to Note and Ash for keeping them waiting. Then they gave him his share of the money from their expedition. Jin told them that he will prepare their bath, so he quickly turned around and left them. Since Ash was the first to use the bath, Jin prepared some food for him and the butler. He was surprised when Note asked him where he purchased his bathtub. He replied that it's from Edie, in the kingdom of Pasteur. The butler was bewildered because it takes 6 months at the least to get the bathtub, so they had to stick with a wooden bathtub for the time being. Nevertheless, with all Jin's cutlery, china and whatnot on display, people might assume he's from that town. However, the butler asked Jin to sell them the robes that he lent. The latter told him not to worry, because he was going to give them the robes anyway. After that, Jin seems confused when the butler told him that the result of their investigation in the forest was was that a strike team would be formed. The butler said that he was afraid that Ash and him would take part, so they can't take those robes for free, so he offers him money, a compensation for the robes. Jin didn't want to take it, but when Note became serious and insisted on the money, he had no choice but to take it. Later on, Ash was finished. It's Note's turn to take a bath, so Jin stood up and got the next batch of hot water. Ash offered a hand, but he refused and told to just sit and drink tea. Then Note excused himself to them. However, Jin noticed that it was his first time to see Ash with her hair down, but she looks like she's about to kill someone, so he asks her what's wrong. The latter asked back if he did see the spirits in the forest. When he said yes, Ash stated that she hadn't seen spirits like that ever since that one court mage went rogue. Jin remembers those spirits in the forest. He asks her if it's rare since he has never seen anyone use magic before, because in his thoughts, spirits lend their power to people either because they like them or because they're called upon by some sort of contract or spell. Nevertheless, they say that out of every 10 spirits, only 2 would be willing to help. Behind that, you can either bind them with contracts or spells to force them out, or one can destroy them with magic. Then Ash said that a spirit's power is its own existence, so when it's spent up, it disappears. She also added that those spirits cease to exist, and that one spirit with black shade is proof that it holds a grudge towards humans. Not only does it then have the chance of turning an animal into a monster, and does not help anyone around it. Jin was surprised, because it seems that those people will eventually become monsters as well. A smile flashes to his face because it means his sister is becoming a demon lord and not a hero, so he said that he was starting to feel like it's best to avoid magic altogether. But his eyes widened when Ash told him when spirits are active, they can get more power than they've spent to recover, and also to grow. An active use of magic helps to stabilize spirits in their world. It seems sorts are drawn to magic because things would flicker away and cease to exist are given permanence. So if Jin doesn't push those spirits away, they'd be more happy to help. She also added that Azu had every opportunity to become one of those black spirits, but chose not to. Instead, to be there for her. She can't help but to compare each and every one of those black spirits to Azu. Jin seems worried for her because he observes that she is quite shaken from seeing those spirits turn to black, so he quickly stood up and asked her to wait. When he came back, he was happy to serve her some snacks, hoping she would not mention it to Note. Then he placed a plate full of sweets. Ash was amazed because she had never seen anything like that food before, which is why he encouraged her to give it a taste. He also said that it's not good to think about it deeply for so long. Then Ash started to eat some, but her face became red since the food was good. She drinks some tea and can't help but be amazed by the apple tart, especially the white cream. She asked for a red thing on the plate, and Jin replied that it's a strawberry. Jin suddenly smiles because he assumes that a young lady shouldn't be eating things that they don't know. It's his fault when he starts to feel worried about her. Jin was not used to comforting people, so all he could think about was offering sweets. Ash looks like she's happy while eating, and at the same time, looks embarrassed because she was worried because she thought she was easy to please. But to her surprise, Jin mentions that there's nothing wrong with that besides. Azu seems happier as well, so she calms herself and smiles. After that, Jin encountered Letsay on his way. The latter asks him if he was able to make him a bag, the one that he made for Chris and Dean, but of course he will pay. He took a measurement out of his bag and was surprised when Letsay let out a sigh and said that there's a good chance it'll get stolen if it stands out so much. Then he turned around so that Jin could take his measurements. He started to say that silver ranks will be forced to participate in the next expedition unless they're on important business or injured. He also added that they, as iron ranks, have been summoned to help out as well. If Jin joins that hunt, he will usually earn stars or 2. The latter assume that there's a bunch of iron ranks that are strong enough but might not have the stars to rank up. He thought that one could just get stars from completing requests. Letsay added that stars are for guild work and community service. Poor behavior hurts chances at getting stars because no one knows who will sign up to complete requests. They're a small fry after all. However, according to Letsay, the way one earns a star depends on the rank. As a bronze rank, he had enough stars to attempt the rank up exam after completing delivery of a few positions. He once heard that bronze ranks can join if they're recommended by a higher rank. Jin told Letsay that he heard Ash and Note are taking part on Chris's recommendation, but in his mind, he was not going to participate. But to his surprise, Letsay said that they are heading out in a month or so, depending on Amedio. Letsay guessed that he didn't know who Amedio was, so he told him that Amedio was a gold ranks adventurer. He heard that the guild called in a few favors to pin them down for that request. Amedio is also teaming up with a magic user who is apparently going to rank up to gold soon. After hearing it, Jin dropped his jaw and wanted to see that, but he couldn't tell it aloud. Letsay also added that the guild thinks there won't be many strong monsters around, 1 or 2 at the most, and the guild thinks Amedio is enough to handle anything. To shock Jin even more, Letsay said that Amedio can see spirits. Night came, Jin went again into the demon forest. Time to hunt monsters to get enough materials to make bags for everyone. He noticed a black spirit behind him, so he abruptly grabbed it and gave it a name. Then he released it, thinking it was for Ash's peace of mind. If he sees black spirits, he will go ahead and name it. It's time for him to get busy again. Jin was waiting for Ash and Note when at last they arrived because he decided to accompany them for a shopping trip. Then he gave them the bag, and Ash was surprised that he finished it in such a short time. Jin ended up making bags for everyone, but with his fondness for manufacturing, it wasn't nearly nearly as difficult as they thought it was. Since it was too early to go shopping, Jin asked them if the expedition wasn't quite a while. He also heard that it's up to the gold-ranked Amadeo to decide when they will head out. Ash reasoned that there's more strangers that they don't know yet, and they will not be able to get what they want until that moment. On their way, two masculine people blocked their way, asking for their money. One of them asked Jin to buy them some drinks, but Jin didn't comply. The man was surprised when he quickly kicked the man. Jin suddenly turns to see who calls him, stating that they picked the wrong person to harass. It was Chris along with Dean and Letzi, who were sweating when they saw that the man was lying on the ground aching. They commented that those men were really foolish to go after the black bear. Jin became curious regarding the black bear that they mentioned. On the other hand, Chris seems happy when the butler tells them to continue their conversation in a nearby restaurant and celebrate their reunion. They arrive at the restaurant, and after a mug cheers, Jin asks them what they have been doing after their expedition. Chris quickly responds that he's been meeting with the guild while Dean's been on the run, while Letzi has been helping Chris with gathering herbs. Dean, who's silent, cleared his throat first before he stated that he's been searching for a new place to stay. He was staying with his sister, and they started to live a bit more frugally because he was spoiling her too much. But when their mother gets involved and is taking complete control. However, while they are talking, Jin notices that Ash seems undisturbed, but he didn't pay much attention to Ash and asked them what was about the black bear. Dean didn't know what else to say since they are referring to him as the black bear. Him and Ash were strong like bears, that some people get the two of them mixed up. Jin looks dismayed since he would have preferred to be called a wolf. Chris opposed him and said that a bear hardly fits his iris-like appearance. Dean agreed because when it comes to wolves, it got to be the king of wolves, Balmor. Jin was confused about who it was, so Chris explained that it was a legendary adventurer. He's been out of the adventurer scene for quite a while, but his name is still renowned, and Dean was a fan. The latter also added that Balmor is cool, which is why he became an adventurer, to be like him. Jin was horrified at Dean, such a whimsical reason. He was astonished that he even makes it to silver rank. Furthermore, they were delighted when he gave them their bags, but to their surprise, even the inside of the bag is made of leather, because something like that is incredibly expensive. But Jin reasoned out that he was trying to make them sturdy. The butler looks sad because he brought money along, but it doesn't feel like enough for the bag, so Jin told him to just buy him a drink after they came back from the expedition. But he couldn't believe that they all agreed, since some say they will get him a keg and a whole cow. After a while, Ash, Letzi, Jin, and the butler leave the two. Jin was bewildered that Letzi was heading in the same direction as them. The latter explains that he is renting a room near the demon forest because it's cheap, but it seems the rent is going to go up soon, since the landlord wants to do the toilet work. That's all the rage. Jin became worried when Ash and the butler suddenly look at him and talk Letzi about their incredible toilet. He didn't know if the two were selling him. Afterwards, Jin wakes up, eats his breakfast, then heads deeper into the woods. On his way, he saw numerous black spirits wandering around, so he caught them one by one and gave them a name. While doing so, he thought that the expedition force would be passing close to that area. He was curious to see how that Amadeo companion uses magic, so he asks a spirit to keep him updated on how the expedition force goes. Then he headed a little bit deeper in the forest. The map that gods gave to him was cut off at the east side of the demon forest. It seems like it's a place that is without spirit, or at least is beyond the reach of the gods who he made acquaintance with. He moves forward, but on his way, a three-horned monster suddenly attacks him. Luckily, he dodges it and quickly take out his all-kill blade and slash it to the monster. He put it in his storage and planned to have a wild boar hot pot later. He was about to leave the place when he noticed a wild asparagus, so he took some and planned to share it with Ash and Note. Then he senses that there's something behind him. When he turns around, he was shocked when a snow leopard walks towards him, but it looks like it was not going to attack him and was trying to say something. To surprise him even more, a voice explained that the snow leopard wanted a favor from him. It would like to sign a contract with Maziel. It's a deer and it translates everything the snow leopard says. His eyes widened and was bewildered because the snow leopard was holding its tail on his mouth, aside from the question if they are spirits. Since the leopard has a horn, but it doesn't have any black shadow, he assumed that it was a holy beast. He was curious, so he asked them who Maziel was. Then the deer told him that it was their friend. To clear things up, he asks if Maziel is on the verge of becoming a black spirit, and if they would like to help by forming a contract with him. The leopard seems to agree, so the deer translate that in exchange, they will form a sanctuary for him in any parts of the woods he desires, a place that will repel hostility like monsters or black spirits. Jin thought since a base in the forest might be handy for naming spirits, so he asked where the two wanted him to go. The two said that he should take a ride with the deer, so he hopped in and held on to its horns, but he was shocked when the deer suddenly ran intensely fast along with the leopard, but he was furious when it suddenly stopped, which is why he fell hard on the ground. Then the deer calls for Maziel, telling that Mao is there. Then a horse came out and asked why they brought humans. Jin assumes that the horse was Maziel and the snow leopard's name was Mao. He notices that the wounds on its shoulder are starting to turn it into a black spirit, so he asked the horse what its name was and wanted to form a contract with it. However, a named spirit must speak its original name to the contractor in order for a contract to be formed. Sometimes a entirely new name can be granted, like the spirits who gathered at his house, but Jin heard that attachment to their existing names make them stronger. But it looks like the horse doesn't want to form contact with a human like him. For the horse, it would be like trying a noose around its own neck, so it will take no part of it. Jin finds the horse a little stubborn, so he makes a move and quickly grabs its back and slams it on the ground. He stated that he was not scared even though the horse called him a scum. The deer and the leopard who were watching found it a little too much, especially that they saw how irritated the horse was. However, Jin asks the horse again for its name. Since Maisel couldn't stand, it had no choice but to tell its name. At first the horse hesitated to form a contract with him, but it looks like there's nothing it could do, so Jin lifted his hand on top of the horse. After it was done, Jin drained a lot of his magic. Then he turned to Mao and Deer and stated that he completed their request. After that, the deer stated again that his action was too excessive, but Jin ignored it. He asks if the sanctuary could be put in a place that's scenic and easily accessible for spirits. Then that snow leopard hiss again, and the deer translates it that Jin should hop again on its back. Mazel, on the other hand, seems still irritated, because he never thought he'd see a human ride on Canel. Then, he hopped again, and assumed that Canel was the name of the deer. Just like his experience on his first ride, Canel ran fast again, and suddenly stopped, which is why he fell hard on the ground for the second time. His irritation vanished when he saw the place that could be his sanctuary. His jaw dropped because it was even better than he was hoping. Then the Snow Mao and Canel start to set up the sanctuary for him and create a thin barrier. After it was set up, he asked if horses wouldn't be able to approach the place. He let out a sigh of relief when they told him that no matter the beast or spirit, as long as they are contracted to him, they can enter. Then the two said their goodbye and quickly ran away. Afterwards, he took the map again and was surprised that there's a new addition to the map since the last time he checked it. He figured out that he can even add places that he's been to the map, even if they're beyond the usual reach of the gods. He was curious if there are more than that, because there are new places in that map that are outside of where Mazel would normally roam. He became excited when he assumed that maybe there'll even be places with Japan-like flora. He just needed to finish the map. He let his eyes look around and planned to figure out what to do with his sanctuary. Meanwhile, on the trade city Naladid, Jin comes to that place to examine buildings as a reference for something to build inside the sanctuary on Magic Forest. Naladid is an island surrounded by ocean on all sides and is said to house some of the most advanced technology in that world. He saw a glass pane and quickly appraised it. He observes that they blow the glass rounds and then link them together on a flat surface. It's more transparent than anything else he has seen in that world so far. He compared it to the glass he had seen on the Canum. It is much thicker, and air bubbles are pretty noticeable. It was a green bauble that looked a bit like a beach ball or something. He continued to wander around and assumed that the store deals in parchment as well. The engravings on the document box he saw are pretty. His eyes sparkled when he saw that there's even stores that sell accessories, wool, dresses, and it really is the most advanced trade city in that world. His jaw dropped when he found that a red glass has gold ornamentation. Even though it's pricey, he thought buyers would still buy it. Then he turned around and left the store since he went there to look at houses, not at the goods. On his way out, he noticed a man who's welcoming him. He wondered if he was a chemist. He thought about what the medical care level of that world looked like. Then he found cocoa beans. The man told him that if he grinds the cocoa and makes it into an elixir, it will prolong lifespan. Jin added that it's going to be bitter if he doesn't add sugar, but it's a good medicine. But his eyes widened when the man told him that nobles like to drink it with sugar, milk, and honey, which is why the price has been going up recently. The price is too high, and it costs 2 mon for a gram. Jin wondered if he should buy it, but in the end, he bought some. He left the store thinking he wasn't sure if he wanted to go visit the more industrial area, because his appraisal says that it seems drying and fermentation takes a lot of effort, and if the cocoa beans are that expensive, it'll be more the further away he gets from that place. He also bought vanilla beans, yellow and brown mustard, and turmeric. Although he already had some in his pantry, it'd be good to see the difference between them. On his way, an old man called for him, but when he turned around, he furrowed his brow and clenched his fist, since the man looked surprised to find him beautiful, because that word suits a woman, and he was not one. But he was wrong, because that word was referring to his bag, and not his appearance. However, the old man apologized to him and asked where he purchased his bag. The bag that's recently patented by the adventurer guilds in the Azul region, since it's convenient. The old man looks sad, because that region is a bit far. Then he told the man that it would be faster to get the specifications and then craft it in their place, because he doesn't know the exact distance, but he will definitely pass mountains that have snow all year round. Then that man apologized for holding him up and waved goodbye. He continued his walk, and he noticed that that conversation had happened 10 times. There might only be 1 or 2 people in that place with large wallets enough to go to Canaan. If their merchants would go to Canaan, then the word would spread about the toilets as well. He was irritated when he remembered that he stayed at an inn yesterday and found that their bathroom was just ajar. He was hoping the word spreads about the toilet soon. After a while, he looks tired since he has looked around enough, so it's time to get his main reason. He went inside a store and an old woman approached him, asking what he was looking for. He said that he was looking for a book about spirits. The old lady replied that he should go to the bookstore since it was a grocery store, because in particular, he was looking for a book that details how to catch a spirit. He remembered Ash told him that those books should be quiet and rare. It's not found anywhere but at Naladid alone. It might not be for sale, but she was so sure that there's some. Hence, he asks himself himself why he's been roaming around those antique and other seedy stores. Nobles usually just buy the books to put them on display, and the books that he was looking for are usually handled by seedier bookstores. The old lady continued to give information, so he cut her off and asked where he could find those seedier stores and left. Afterwards, he found the store and immediately asked the man if they had any books for perusal, but he was bewildered when the man said that there are books with and without contents. They're wooden boxes with faux bindings and can be made with a secret compartment. Then the man showed him the difference. He notices that they're just display pieces, so he asks for the one with content. He finds that the book with blank pages is much pricier because a skilled craftsman could use it to record detailed processes inside. Jin examines the book and observes that it was true. The manuscript has a spirit, but he was curious if the spirits were constantly rewriting what's inside. Then he took a book on the shelf and tried to read it. Thanks to his language skills, he was able, though it's still hard to understand anagrams and metaphors with their own specific meanings. He suddenly stopped because he thought that there's definitely more than just a book in that set. Other things like magic circles and notes to combine diagrams with text. So he immediately asked the man if he had other books with the same spine as the one he was holding. He was delighted when the man said that they have, but they are more expensive because they have pictures. Even if they can't understand the books, it can still be pricey. A book where spirits weren't sticking to it as a prank, but rather because they were safeguarding the original copy. It contains history, herbs, and spirits. Name it, and the book has it. He bought the book and left the store. Now that he accomplished his goal on that place and spent all his money, it's time for him to go home. Night came, he started to read the first books that he bought, called The Risk and Advantages of Spirit Contracts. The risks are mainly in the attributes of the spirits and the amount of magic power needed, which shouldn't be an issue for him. The advantages can vary from spirit to spirit, but the one shared benefit is that they will appear when one calls for them. Normally, magic and sorcery pulls strength from the spirits in the nearby vicinity, so one might not always have a compatible spirit nearby, but with contracted spirits, one calls them to you to almost any location, making magic more efficient. Though he heard summoning a fire spirit to a snowy mountain can be very draining. He thought spirits were just omnipresent and didn't differ too much, but it seems they're all quite different. He helped and named spirits, and they've been helping him out. He remembers Halhalfa and Mishto. They are both light attributes, yet still have great differences. He suddenly curses when he remembers the ball of light that definitely doesn't fit the light attribute. He continued to read those books until morning came. After that, he was eating his breakfast along with Ash and Note. The latter always finds his cooking delicious. He was glad that they liked it. The two will be joining the expedition that day. They will be away for a while, so he invited them for breakfast. Breakfast in that world seems to be mainly bread. It seems hot food is rare in that world. Jin was surprised when he asked them if they cook in the morning, because the butler replied that they have some tea or buy from outside stalls. Aside from that, people go to work as soon as the sun rises, so they usually don't start a fire to save on firewood costs. After a while, Ash states that it's time for them to go, but Jin asks them to wait. Then he handed them their lunch. It's a bit heavy, so they can share them with Dean and others. Then they bid their goodbye to each other. Jin let out a sigh since it's time for him to stock up building materials. Then he started the work. Since there's a safe zone in the forest, Richie seems happy when he announces that he can come with him. The little puppy looked excited. It even ran around him, so he carried that puppy and they transferred together. But as soon as they arrived, he noticed that all the spirits fled. He presumes that they are afraid of Richie. He let go of the puppy, because as long as it doesn't pass that thin barrier, it's fine to play. Then he took out a shovel in his storage and started to do some landscaping. He decided to build a small 2-story house in that sanctuary. One room on both floors because he'd like to be able to go downstairs and have a nice cup of tea and still be able to go upstairs and lounge when he's tired. He'd also like a bigger area outside for Richie for it to run around. That way they can still be together even when he is out naming spirits. He shopped around for a few days looking for plaster, wood bricks and others, so he should be all set to build. After a couple of hours, he was tired and it was time to take a lunch break. He called Richie and gave it its food, and they calmly ate. Later on, he saw Richie grab a piece of branches. Jin was not sure what to do with the garden because he thought Richie is quite inquisitive. He was still thinking and analyzing when suddenly someone hissed. He couldn't believe that the sound came from the snow leopard along with the deer. To shock him even more, he suddenly stood up when he saw the horse was also with them. They were all looking at Richie. It looks like the three spirits knew Richie. Jin furrowed his brow when he heard that Richie disappeared 5 years ago, and it was because he failed to summon a hero. He was curious, so he asked Richie if he used to be their boss. Since it was a puppy, it didn't reply and just stared at him. So he assumes 3 possibilities. First, he doesn't remember. Second, he doesn't want to remember. And the third is, it's too troublesome to think about it. It was news for him that they knew each other. His eyes widen when he presumes that the sanctuary might be Richie's former home, but he was confused because wolves would be more at home in a forest than in a city. Then he went to the 3 spirits and learned that Richie is stronger and more free from any other spirits. The leopard also added that his voice can reach every corner of the world, but Jin didn't pay much attention to their conversation because it looks like the leopard was a big fan of Richie, so he let the latter ramble on while he keeps on working. But he can't continue because Kanel says that Richie protected that forest, who called themselves the Apostles of Wind. Jin became curious curious, so he listened again, and found that a year ago, every last trace of Richie disappeared. He assumes that's probably because it's the time when he took him to his house, and that house has a barrier that isolates it from the rest of the world. But something caught him. They just say that Richie saved the forest from the Apostles of Wind. He was wondering if that is why there only seems to be forest further inland to the east, and only mountain on the western coastline. So he asks them who are the Apostles of the Wind. They said that it was the previous hero and their followers. Jin was shocked because it looks like that past hero trampled over that forest in the past, and that hero has been a terrible person. They also added that they were going to suppress Kadal's influence over forest, and then create a means to traverse over water. Now Jin felt a bit bad for taking advantage of the resources at Naladiad. He looked at Richie and was worried if the puppy ended up hating him. He kneels down and rubs Richie's stomach. However, Mao and Kanel were sad because even up to that day, the forests had not returned to the west. It's a matter of severity. The only safe places for humans to live are in towns and villages, which requires deforestation and carving away of nature. Step into the forest and you will come across spirits, monsters, and wild beasts. They cut away more and more forests, built more boats, and expanded the range of where humans could live and thrive. They must realize the dangers of deforestation. Maisel interrupts and says that he heard that the current hero was summoned by the spirit of light, but they're far from peaceful. He went to check in the situation, but their great magic usage turned its once pure white body to a darkened color. The horse thanked Jin. It was spared the grief of potentially consuming its peers. The latter ignores it and says that it should thank its friend, since they set their contract. Anyway, Mazel told him that there's some real nastiness out there. Even if higher ranked spirits aren't particularly lacking in any way, they're still compelled to grow and consume. While individually somewhat weak, they'll still be protected by the hero, and Jin shouldn't get too close to the hero. They're much stronger than him. He replied not to worry, because he'd never get close to them. He thought that he had no regrets asking for his food pantry, but he might have to get a bit more serious and become stronger. He must have to know how to fight aside from cooking and craftsmanship. However, Jin holds Richie's face and asks if it lost its memory, so he asks Mazel if he knows anything about the puppy. He believes what's shown on the map is the extent of the power of those gods, and any contracted spirits. To his dismay, the three spirits say in teary eyes that Richie was great, wiser, and braver than any other spirits because they made their point already. Afterwards, he went home and was ready to eat, but didn't forget to thank for the food he had. While eating, he had the idea to start a farm at that house. He was hoping that eventually, potatoes and tomatoes will become more commonplace in that world as well. So far, those vegetables can only be found and grown at that house. He thought of using appraisal on them to try and source the original varieties. According to the book that he read, a good far crop can be ensured by befriending the earth and water spirits in the sea. He was hoping that one day, he'll be able to eat something delicious in a restaurant that includes those ingredients. After eating, it's time for him to get busy. Then he went to the sanctuary and started to do the work, at the same time farming and naming spirits. So far, farming and construction have been going quite well. He also planted a few vegetables from the pantry, so hopefully the local spirits can take it. And that time, he didn't use the growth powder. He was indeed having more fun and content than he was with his sister. So he grabbed a rope and invited the puppy to play. Then he suddenly remembered the expedition, although he was not too concerned about them since the guild hasn't been acting out of the ordinary, and the other countries are sending their own teams as well. He throws the rope and the puppy quickly rushes towards it and brings it back to him. They are both happy. After a while, Jin decided to go home because he wanted to try something. Later on, he gathered materials that he needed. He once read a book that he bought. He needed to create a magic circle. He crushed ingredients while pouring magic power, added water that spirits played in, and the ink was complete. Then he applied it to the drawing compass and drew the shape from the book. Then he combined that with the symbols from the other books. But he suddenly stops and thinks about what kind of spirits he should try to summon. Is it the earth, water, or fire? Yet he still couldn't decide. But he suddenly froze and thought about the ice. He looked at Richie, who was on his lap. It was the spirit of the ice and darkness. So he asked the puppy if it was able to help cool down stuff in the future. But he was distracted when he thought about ice cream, if he could make one. So he focused again and started to draw. Since he already planted a field, he hopes for a good harvest. He drew for the symbol of fertility and poured some magic in it. Then Pal suddenly appeared. Since she was the spirit of land and harvest, he was bewildered if he actually summoned Pal properly. But he was surprised when Van also appeared and said that the ink that he's been using was quite poor. Then he lifted his hand and the drawing disappeared. He was confused because he made them according to the book's instructions. Then Kadal and Rudale also appear, claiming that the book must be wrong and it is good enough for calling nearby contracted spirits. Then Mishto suddenly came right in front of his face. He was confused, asking why they suddenly appeared, and no one thought to knock. Then Ish and Halalfa also came. The latter answered that he brought many fine spirits into his house, and that's why they are comfortable there. He presumes that those small flecks of lights are actually spirits. They're fleeting, born in the morning, then disappear by evening. In any case, the gods are all in his house now. To his surprise, Ish asks him why he didn't talk about them, instead of relying on those books. Jin could recall that they gave him instructions at the start, and wondered if they'll even look after him in moving forward. Afterwards, Van asked him to have a little match, since it was boring sitting around. Then they went outside, swords in their hands, then began the the match. Jin was the first to make the move. He rushed towards Van, but the latter was so quick to block his attack and do a counter-attack. Luckily, Jin also dodges and steps backwards. However, he fell hard on the ground. He was disoriented when Van looked seriously at him and said that he was not moving properly, since up to that point, he's been just imitating others' moves, taking in other things, trying to get stronger. According to Van, he was not in control of his movement at all, a bit of a mess. He formed a smile on his face because Van's assessment was wrong. He's been just imitating their physical actions without considering how to make it fit on his own body. Van let out a sigh of dissatisfaction and asked how he imagined his sword to be. He replied in his thoughts through visualizations. Since he was from a peaceful world, he visualized it from the shows that he used to watch, but he remained silent in his own thoughts. The sword that he had is different from those movies that he used to watch. He's still on the ground when Van used his magic and lifted his sword. His eyes widened when he saw that the latter was transforming his sword. Van uses his magic to transform Jin's all-kill blade. The latter was shocked to see that it transformed into a totally Japanese katana. When Van handed him the sword, Jin noticed that it's a bit longer than a usual katana. The cord is made with a chain instead of cloth, quite fitting for a fantasy world. Then he stood up and gathered courage, since it's the sword of his homeland. He unsheathed it and pointed it at Van, ready to start for another round. Then their match begins. Jin noticed the difference. His previous sword was something straight out of his fantasy, so it's quite hard to know what to do. But the katana is easier to visualize. He finds it pretty fun, so he forms a stance and is ready to attack. But his jaw drops when Van compliments him, telling that he's been much better than before. Then the sword disappeared. He thought that the all-kill blade is meant to be able to cut anything aside from its creator, but he was thankful because he could swing and slash the sword without any hesitation. Helalfa and Mishto looked happy because he was doing a great job. Then they rushed towards him. Later on, Rudale called him and gave him the book. As he expected, the book that he bought is based on incorrect assumptions. Then Rudale ordered him to go to the temple in Thelmist after 7 days. Based on the map, the place is an island south of Cavill Peninsula. He was grateful when Rudale gave him the book and told that he would go and prepare a proper book for him. That means he needed to save money to make sure he could buy the book in a week's time. However, Pal commented that he planted quite a few crops. She also says that she will help, hoping he'll offer some of the harvest to her. Ish is on the side, claiming that he will help too. He was delighted and demented at the same time, because the two like bread and salt and they're not able to taste things they eat. According to Ish, they can taste the things that they take an interest in, and the crops that he planted are interesting enough. After that, he went to Nullidate again. He grabbed something to eat first at a restaurant. He seems content with his truffle pasta. He was amazed that Nullidate is really a trade city with all kinds of different delicacies. He came again to that place to sell the hide and horns of the fox he took down before. Thanks to supply and demand, it can be sold for more than Canum. The money that he needed seems to be under control. Then he went to a store, but he was having a hard time finding something similar to his all-kill blade. Later on, a man approaches him and says that if he needs anything he can ask. He caught Jin's attention when says that they have a spirit weapon in the back room. They're weapons that a spirit has possessed, or spirits that have become a weapon. He thought that Van made the all-kill blade, so it means that it's a spirit weapon as well. Furthermore, the man continues and says that the strength of the sword varies depending on the strength of the spirits and is not required for maintenance. One should keep the sword in a place where spirits like. Plenty of people keep them at the bow of spirit. Jin thought that he kept his sword in the storage, but maybe he should take it out more often, since gods didn't give any warning on how to use it, so it should be fine. Then he left the store and went home. At his house, he prepares a basin of water. Time to take a little peek at what's happening in the expedition. Recently, it became part of his daily routine to check on the expedition teams by scrying through a basin. He saw a guy and assumed that it was the gold rank part led by Amedio that Letze was talking about before. The image is clear for him because he asks every spirit in their general vicinity to help out. He observes that Amedio is surrounded by women. While watching, he was delighted by the walnuts that he's been eating. Anyway, he saw a lady in the robe. It looks like there's a light attribute spirit with her. Then the archer who probably got green wind spirits since she has branches around her bow. As for Amedio, no matter how he looks at it, that's definitely a prairie dog. He noticed the butt of the dog. He got multiple questions, but he really noticed how cute seeing a bit wiggle like that. Then, he takes a peek at Ash and the others. He observes that they are still moving as a group of 5. He saw Azu, Dean's spirit, as well as the spirit that's obsessed with Chris. The butler's spirit must be nearby as well. He remembered Dean's spirit would hang around his boot. He was confused if it liked the smell or what. In any case, just to be safe, he left his spirit to Letze, who seemed to be trying to groom his beard. He'd rather not have a spirit than develop weird kinks. But the worst part is, it's happening without Letze's knowledge. Realize that the spirit of the gold-ranked party is quite big. Seems like they're not influenced as much by the black spirits as a result. Then he took a peek and saw that Amadeo was fighting a lizard. He was amazed when the latter split the lizard in two. Then the lady with the robe uses her staff and does some magic. His eyes widened as the lizard was taken down just like that. He notices another person and observes that something seems off about him. He walked towards the archer who was kneeling on the ground. Then he slowly unsheathed his sword. The archer noticed the presence of the person, so she quickly turned around and pulled out her dagger and pierced it to the person. Jin was shocked by how how amazing the archer was. She was an archer, but she's also skilled at close combat. She's not a gold rank for nothing. The person was still standing and was possessed by a black spirit. Then he suddenly fell on the ground, and the black spirit got loose from the man and rushed towards the archer. He was astonished when the black spirit repelled and returned to the previous host. The black spirit became more powerful after possessing a target, but can't sustain that power without a host. But he was curious what led to that person being possessed. The archer walked towards the man. He was curious what she'll do to the man and how she can defeat the black spirit. Since Jin was forming a contract with those black spirits, he was sure that the archer could defeat it with a spirit weapon. But the question is, what happens if the spirit possessed a person? He was astonished when the archer lifted his bow and arrow and pointed it to the host. He suddenly stood up and slammed his hand on the table. He thought he understood that world, but he was wrong. He realized that lives are cheap and violence is commonplace. His eyes widened in terror to think that the two were so close to death. He suddenly slapped his own face and let out a sigh. Spirits can't be seen or touched by ordinary people. Even when possessing a host, damaging the host also damages the spirit possessing them. But he was confused, since the archer had a spirit weapon. Why didn't she attack the spirit when it left the host? Later on, another member of the expedition force arrived at the scene. He was upset when he saw the dead body of the first host. He quickly kneels down, trying to wake him up, but the man didn't notice the black spirit. In a blink of an eye, the black spirit moved at him. Jin observed that the archer didn't notice it, so he assumed that she can't see black spirit. He was confused if there are different ways of seeing spirits, since it's his first time seeing a spirit possessed a human. It's protruding from his body, and it seems it is because it's just starting to possess him. He asks himself if Amadeo and the lady with the robe can also see spirits. According to Letzi, Amadeo could see them, but it's likely very difficult to see a spirit that's possessed by another person. If they could see them, they'd get quarantined immediately. Jin don't know what to do. It's not like he have an obligation to solve the problem. He learned a lot from what he saw, and he could sort it out in the future. But since Ash and the other were nearby, he was hesitating to solve it. But in the end, he made up his mind. Jin called for the light and shadow spirits and order them to make a shadow darker near his face, so that people can't see who he was. He also says to lift him up about 10 centimeters above the ground. Keep his hood in place so his feet aren't seen. He even ordered not to raise the cloak up along with his body. Then it all set, and he was now ready to head out there. Amadeo couldn't believe when the archer was trying to explain what happened. She knew what really happened, but she didn't get a chance to say something, because out of nowhere, Jin arrived at the place. They were all surprised by his sudden appearance. Jin seems happy that they didn't recognize him, especially Ash and the other, since his face was obscure with his robe. Before he talked, Jin asked the spirit to change his voice. Then he pointed to the man, the new host of the black spirit. The man was surprised when Jin suddenly stood in front of him and grabbed the spirit on his body. He couldn't believe that his fingers were going inside his body, but he didn't mind it and quickly took the spirit out. Amadeo was shocked when he found out that it was a black spirit. The lady in robe seems confused because the host is lying on the ground, but Jin found the black spirit in other's body. He assumed that the man is also being possessed. Then the man who was taken down by the archer is still alive, so Jin kneeled beside him and used his heal magic. They were all shocked when the man became conscious and suddenly get up. Jin was relieved that the man recovered, but it looks like he can't fool the lady in robe for who he really was, because she could see the spirits around him. Jin couldn't find a word since he already ordered his spirits to stay at a distance because they might draw attention, but since they help him a lot, he didn't mind. It was proven that the lady can see spirits. Then he stared at her, saying he didn't know where that spirit came from, and advised her to keep an eye on the initial host. When he looked at his friends, Jin was worried that they could find out who he was, so before it could happen, he turned around and left, even though Amadeo was calling for him. Then he uses his transfer magic to leave the place. After that, he still holds the black spirit and seems like it didn't get too far. He decided to make a contract with it and let it go deeper in the woods. He observes that black spirits seem to consume other spirits in order to make up for the parts they're missing themselves. It looks like if they don't continually feed, they'll continue to waste away. He remembered Maisel, who was bigger than him. Even when turning black, it still has some semblance of self-control, and he still has to overpower it. According to Maisel, if spirits form a contract or find a host, their weakness will subside. Their cravings persist, but the pain eases, and they eventually can control their urges. Since he has been stopping his contracted black spirits from consuming each other, it's time for him to head home. Fondly. At his home, he was thanking the spirits for helping out, and they can dispel their magic. Then he looks again at the basin to know what happened when he left. He saw that the two men were kneeling before Amadeo and the archer. Although they were possessed, the man made the first move on the archer. Though it'll be a while before Ash and the others come back to Kenem, he will ask them naturally how their expedition went. Jin went back to the Dinoso family. The father seems terrified at him for taking his clothes off. His children heard the commotion, then checked what's going on. They offer him a hand and cooperate with Jin. Shiva was surprised when Jin gave her clothes to wash, since those are of good quality. She was reserved because the kids look after the animals, and those clothes might get dirty. But Jin didn't mind, so he asked her to take Dinoso with her, and clean him too. He even brought shoes for him. On the other hand, Dinoso looks like wanted to cry in irritation and shame, since he has no top clothes. He asks his wife to stop ganging up on him, but his wife ignores him and says that he will surely scrub him from head to toe. Then Shiva starts to pull him out. However, he was at the dinosaur's house for a reason. He's been observing and studying carpenters and mason the last few days. The more he saw, the more unsanitary it became. He just has to do something about it. It's common to see filth on the streets. That's why there are steps on the front door to stop it from sleeping under the door on rainy days. Horse manure and other stuff. He ordered them to clean it all up. The dinosaur family slept on a straw mattress covered by a cloth, while other farmers might not even sleep on the cloth, just bare straw on their barns. So he pulled it out first to change. At the very least, he'd like to be able to help his friends stay clean, which is why he came to their place. Then he started to sweep inside and outside of the house. Later on, the house was shining in cleanliness. Even Dinoso's eyes were sparkling. The family couldn't believe it and commented that it was pristine. Jin says that he tried his best, but the only thing left is to repair the shutters. He was about to repair it, but Dinoso stopped him, telling that he will do it tomorrow. Then he offered some tea. The husband and wife asked their children to go and clean up quails and get a few eggs too. The children abruptly raised their hands to follow their parents' command. After that, while playing some cards, Dinoso asks him if he likes to clean. Jin simply replied that he didn't, and added that there's some places that he can't stand being unsanitary. He came to their place on a whim to clean up. Dinoso looks embarrassed. Shiva, who came with a tray of food in her hand, wink at her husband and says that Jean likes things to be clean. Then she placed the tray on the table. It's her signature dish according to Dinoso. It's pot au feu with quail and leeks. Jin dropped his jaw. He could smell that the leeks had absorbed all the flavor, and he couldn't get enough of it. He uses his appraise magic because he will try to add that in his recipe repertoire. Then they pray and start to eat. Jin was happy because that family is the embodiment of what he considers to be the ideal family. He was hoping that maybe one day he'd like to have that kind of family. He erased a figure of a woman in his mind and continued to eat. Furthermore, Jin went to Thelmist. He heard that the place is known for its lace and silver work. He needed to go first in the temple before going shopping. He looked around to look for the temple that Rudale's mentioned. He asks for assistance from an old man to find books, but his eyes widened because the old man was wearing a black hair and purple eyes, just like what Rudale foretold. But he was confused when the old man said that he too received a prophecy. He asks himself if what Rudale says was considered prophecy. Then, he agreed to the old man and led him to a place. At the entrance, he found a large statue of Rudale. The old man reminded him not to tell anyone whatever he saw in the place. He replied that he had his word. Behind the statue was a secret door that the old man opened. His eyes widened when as soon as the door opened, there was a kid inside that looks like Rudale, but slightly different. He was curious about who it was. Jin observes that the kid has blue eyes and hair, but faintly resembles Rudale. He took a closer look at the candlelight that the kid was holding. It was not actually a candlelight, but a light emitted from small spirits. He assumed that the kid was a spirit too. To be able to create the illusion of a flame when it doesn't actually exist requires substantial power. The hummingman the kid didn't pay attention to Jin and turned around to leave. He was now bewildered if he should follow them or what, but the kid turns to look at him, so he follows the kid. He seems excited when he notices a hidden passageway to a secret area that they are about to enter. When they entered, he was amazed by the numerous books that went all the way to the ceiling. The kid suddenly talks and says that he believes Jin was looking for books about summoning spirits. The latter agreed and added that he would like to know about how the place came to be. The kid didn't reply. Instead, he took a book and gave it to Jin. According to the kid, the book has information on that place and how to navigate it. Then Jin can find whatever book he'd like. The kid showed the area where he can comfortably read, then left him. As stated in the book, long ago, one of the southern kingdoms had a book-crazed emperor who would confiscate and hoard books from any and all merchants. Their library is even under attack by monsters and a dragon. But before it was burned and razed to the ground, Rudale transferred the library to that place, and that kid became the keeper of the library. They are related to Rudale, which is why he felt the similar vibes. Afterwards, he took another book where the title Heroes had the powers that only Luffy previously had. He was confused who the Luffy was, but he was horrified when the kid suddenly came out of nowhere and gave him another book where the history of Luffy was written. As stated, long ago, a group of people founded the nation of Bassa. Those were the Luffy people. They had the protection of the spirits, so while they were a small nation, they were comparatively strong. But struggles for the throne and invasions from other countries lead to their downfall. Those left out without protection of the spirits crowned the sole remaining Luffy woman as their queen. Those people began to call themselves as Luffy people, and when the Luffy kingdom fell, the royal line fell with them. Jin closes the book after reading. He presumes that there are different Luffy people, those from the kingdom of Basa and the people of Luffy. The people of Luffy are also said to be skilled with spirits, though not as deep as the Luffy people and their spirit lineage. He found that the library is great. He will surely come back there if he ever has to look something up. Afterwards, at his home, Jin was reading a book when someone knocked. When he opened it, he found Ash, who looked like a wild fox ready to attack. To lighten her mood, Jin greeted her. Then he noticed that her hair was wet, so he asked if she had already taken a bath. But it seems Ash's irritation never fades and just says from the basin. Then Azu flew on his shoulder. He thought maybe she doesn't like the feeling of everything being damp. He told Ash that if she let him know earlier, he boiled water for her because he was happy to do that for her. But it seems his words ignited her frustration frustration more, and told that she was in such a bad mood. Jin ignored her mood because he was aware of Ash's disposition. After he leaves the island in the previous and takes a bath, the dirt and filth on him was caked and thick. There's no difference on their expedition. Their trip was longer, and they didn't get a chance to take a bath. However, Jin told Ash that he will boil water for her. Then he looks for her butler. Ash replied that the butler is washing, and he'll come later. He apologizes for being a bother, but she can't stand her feelings, so Jin prepares tea first while waiting for the water to boil. Then he comes close and offers some food, but Ash quickly blocks him because of her smell. Jin didn't mind her smell, but if it makes her feel better, he makes a distance. Ash remembered something and took out a pouch and gave it to him. He opened the pouch and found a magic iron. Since his sword was made from ordinary steel, if he forged it with magic iron, it would result in a much stronger weapon. It sounds expensive, so Jin accepted her present. Then he starts to ask questions regarding their trip. He suddenly blew the tea that he was drinking when Ash said that there's someone in the forest that looks exactly like him. He was worried if they saw his face through the robes, so he asks her what kind of person he is. Ash softened her face and said that the man had spirits with him, grabbed the spirit, and that the man was so kind. She also added that it didn't seem to have a dominant element, maybe because the spirits were concealing Jin through that robe. Then she starts to elaborate what happened with the man possessed by the black spirit. The archer named Nina retaliated, and the spirit detached itself and looked for another host. Jin interrupts and asks her if she and her butler weren't able to see the black spirit, because once a spirit enters a host, they are concealed by the magic power of their host, which is why Rosa, the sorcerers, didn't see it move either. Jin marks the name of the two ladies. Then he asks what happened to the man possessed by the black spirit. Ash explains that there is a war between two nations in the Middle Plains. One of the nations, Haldia, was said to have used magic of a large scale, so that might be the cause. Because of the long conflict, many have died. It seems like, along with the magic use, is the cause of all those black spirits. And it happened in the past. Jin furrowed his brow and asked if that nation was run by an idiot, because the black spirit tends to flees, so they don't often attack the person who used magic, but he has doubts that Haldia will have a good harvest for that year. Ash warns him that Rosa was looking for that stranger that looks like him, because the man might be a descendant of the people of Luf. But there's a misunderstanding. He was the stranger, but he was definitely not the people of Luf's descendants. Later, Note arrives with a firewood on his hand, then apologizes for his late arrival. Jin thanks him, but the butler says that he should be the one who should thank him. According to the butlers, even the nobles wouldn't have access to amenities like he does. He was amazed that the soap Jin gave doesn't have a gamey smell. Jin was happy that he liked it. While Ash was taking a bath, they could prepare something for later. Since they have a lot of time, he plans to make a meat pie and castellan pancakes. Then, he starts to interrogate the butler regarding the possessed man. The butler heard rumors that a hero had been summoned in the distant Shlumtus kingdom, and the kingdom wants to find it as a countermeasure to the hero. He had thought that the people of Luf were still living in their world. They hit something of a lucky streak, so Jin suggests that they should stay away from the guild for a while, especially with those gold rank parties. Note agree with him, but he was sad because if they ask Ash to assist them, they'd be put in an awkward position. But since the party was leaving after a short rest, so as long as they don't get caught up with them, they'll be fine. In that case, Jin will ask Ash to help him out, because she prioritizes requests made to her. On the other hand, Jin was thinking if he should make himself known to the guild, and say he was not a descendant of the Luf people, but he erased the idea since it was a hassle for him. Later on, he started to make food. He reminds himself not to deflate the meringue. Richie and a spirit watching him, looks like it can't control itself and slightly touches the food. He put it in an oven to cook slowly so it doesn't burn on any one side. Ash suddenly appeared in his kitchen, asking what he was making, so he told her that he was making castella pancakes and meat pie. Her eyes suddenly spark and seem excited, so he told her that when the butler finishes his bath, they can eat. Afterwards, he put the food in front of the two. Their eyes widened just by looking at the food. They started to dig in. They were amazed how delicious the food was. Jin smiles. He was glad to see it fits their taste. As they all agreed before going on the expedition, they all met up for lunch after they returned. They are all happy with the beef because they were stuck eating a lot of dried meat during their expedition. But Jin wanted to laugh because they still ordered a lot of meat. Jin noticed Ash seems couldn't get over to the meat pie that he made because she was looking for a meat pies on that restaurant. Dean suddenly remember, while there were 2 and 3 horned monster, one of them was a demonic wolf. Demonic monsters can be recognized by the dark haze that covers their eyes. Though there are different types, the dark haze usually doesn't spread and instead increases the size of their horns. If that dark haze spread and covers the entire body of the monsters, it becomes a complete demon. If that happens, it becomes incomparably stronger. Dean assumes that there must be more of them in the demon forest. Chris also commented that the guild might have had an inkling of that kind of development, but he was curious why they had 3 gold-ranked adventurers on the expedition. Jin, who's listening, continues his eating. That's why Chris and Dean stare at him. They comment about how he eat, but he ignores them and asks to continue their story. However, let's continue the story and say that Haldia has been using an excessive amount of magic. Rosa and the other 2 were talking about a hero being summoned in Shlumtas. It seems that Amadio is planning to head out again and wants to gather a bunch of adventurer parties. It's been a long time since the last time when such a large large expedition force was formed. The butler asks them if Amadeo invited them to join in. Dean did invite, but he claimed he declined it because he thinks their personalities clash. Then he asks Chris. The latter said that as knight, he can't possibly turn down the requests of a beautiful person in need of aid. The dean turned to Ash and asked if he was invited. Ash quickly told that she turned him down. Jin was surprised, but he was glad he discussed that matter with Note the other day. On the other hand, Letzi announced that he didn't get an invitation, but his sad mood changed when Jin told him that Amadeo doesn't have a good eye for people. He thought that Amadeo was just choosing people who have spirits accompanying them. Dean commented that with Amadeo's cronies, it will get messy, but he still has to go. Letzi and Jin let out a sigh and warned Dean to stay safe out there. Then Chris asks Jin if he will not accompany them on their expedition. The latter didn't hesitate to say that he was not going and didn't want to camp outside. After that, Letzi announced that orders of bags are flooding in since the guild gifted a few of Jin's bags to the gold-ranked party. The latter was grateful towards the guild and his friend. Later on, Jin inquired of a lady if there were any houses for sale at the back of the Fox, because Note once mentioned that one of the lots had become vacant. The back of the Fox is the name of the street where both Jin and Ashes were staying. However, the lady knew him since he was currently renting, so the lady left him for a second when he asked about the neighborhood before committing to buying a house. When she returned, he gave him a couple of books. Jin was happy because he thought one should be silver ranked or higher to purchase a house, but they will trust one if that person does a lot of business. Aside from the fact that both commercial and apothecary guild have been vouched for him. Then the lady gives him a choice. He can buy the house he is currently in, or he could go for a house that's a bit nicer. Jin chose that house that he was currently in, since he can afford it. He asked the lady if he could purchase it. The lady understands, but she reminds him that the house at the back of the Fox is also available. It was owned by a guild, and they're planning to put it on the market once the expedition ends. She also added that Amadeo was looking for someone, and it's more likely that he'll stay in the town even after the expedition is over, so it's possible they'd acquired it for their retinue. Jin was dismayed about Amadeo as his neighbor, so he suddenly decided to buy the lot as well. He will renovate it and then leave it out to a more permanent resident. Then he leaves the place. Just like that, Jin ended up purchasing 2 houses. While he was thinking how to renovate the house, he bumps into Letzi. The latter said that the majority of the expedition were from out of town, so he quit. He commented that Amadeo was a bit annoying. Letzi laughed at him, claiming that he should be thankful because he was out there, taking care of those monsters. Jin also said that Dean and Chris have been pulled along, but Ash was out of hunting. He knew where Ash was because he lived close to her. That reminds Letzi. He asks Jin to let him know if a new room or house were available. Jin was surprised that he was moving out. Since Letzi was recently promoted, he is finally able to buy a house. Jin looks dismayed because Letzi actually works his way up from the bottom to be able to properly buy a house, unlike him. Then an idea came to his mind, and suddenly asked Letzi to help him with something. Morning came, Jin and Letzi started to work. The latter couldn't believe that both Ash and him have a house on the back of the Fox. Since Jin was making potions, every now and then he'd rather not share the well with anyone, because people rent out rooms and access to their personal wells. There are a lot of things he'd rather not let people know, but at the same time, he'd still like to be able to help people. Then, Letzi says that his Elidal house was 3 stories with a storefront. He'd probably rent out the 3rd floor and attic. Jin suddenly stops working and asks why a storefront. His jaw dropped when he thought Letzi was already married, but he was not. According to Letzi, getting a wife will come naturally right after getting his own house for sure. Jin assumes that Letzi have someone he likes right now, so it's time for a love story. The so-called love story ended before it could even start, because Letzi says if he was to spend time searching for a partner, that time would not be spent working. Afterwards, they stop working and grab some food. Letzi says that Jin's food is as good as ever. He also asks what the faint sourness is. Jin replied that it was a tomato, but he forgot that he hadn't found any tomato in that world. So he let out a sigh and told Letzi that he shouldn't just eat his food without asking first what's in it. To his surprise, Letzi says that if it's him making the food, then it's definitely fine. He was flattered, but as usual, he was shy when someone gave compliments right in front of his face. His mood changes when Letzi asks him if the party is going to cause trouble. He replied that getting too involved with the gold ranks and their followers is sure to bring about trouble, so he just wanted to avoid them. Jin widens his eyes when Letzi says that it'll be a problem if the party finds out that he can see spirits. Letzi was right, but he didn't know how Letzi knew that he could see spirits. The latter smirked at him when he didn't say a word. He was horrified when Letzi added that he knew since Chris never calls him by his name, though no one in their group notices it. Jin realized that every time he met with Chris, he never called him by Jean instead. He called him Evening Twilight. Letzi also added to ask Chris to use his actual name. He might be a bit strange, but he's a really nice guy. Chris seems to get a lot of requests from the higher-ups. He also gets more because Dean turns some of them. He is indeed a good guy, although he's a bit too loud and boisterous. Jin furrowed his brow because Chris was a man who trusted his intuition. It's a shame for him that he doesn't know the reasoning behind it. Then he asks Letzi what to do, because if he asks Chris, everyone would know that he can see spirits. But to his surprise, Letzi jumped in joy. He let out a sigh because he confirmed what he suspected. He knew there's something special about Chris. Jin couldn't believe it. Letzi just bluffed him the whole time. However, the latter promises Jin that he will keep an eye on the gold rank for him. He tapped Jin's shoulder and thanked him for the meal. Then he turned around to get back to work. After that, while he was tending to the crops, he continued to name spirits around the area the expedition force would pass by. He also managed to, with Ash's help, create a medicine for an eye disease. Apparently that was unheard of, so when he sold it to a commercial guild, it caused quite a stir. After finishing the toilet work, he'll have to remodel the new house. He had a lot of things to do, but first he should do his part as the people of Lufei. Then, he uses his magic to transfer in the demon forest when other nations have started expeditions and hunting in there. Using spirits, those nations share information about the current state of the forest. He uses his search power and goes around the forest in disguise, and to have them discuss his sighting of action in the forest. He uses his search power, and in no time, he finds the adventurer from the Empire. They were dealing with 2 horned foxes and 3 horned badgers. He also saw owls, bats, and a bear. He was bewildered because there were too many against the 3 adventurers. The situation was reversed. The hunters are becoming the hunted. He remembers Kaina says that there are not enough survey teams sent out into the forest. When Jin saw that the bear started to attack, he quickly moved and unleashed his all-kill blade and attacked several monsters. One of the adventurers who looked horrible asked who he was. Jin didn't answer and just simply used his healing power to cure the bruise of the man. Then he told them not to push their luck in the forest, turn around and leave them. The man was calling for him, but Jin snubbed him and continued to walk away. The man's companion rushed towards him. Though in shock, they were crying because he was still alive. Furthermore, Jin finds his work annoying, but it was necessary. He needs to build up a reputation for showing in the forest. Then he'll spread rumors that he was heading northwest past the Black Mountains. He needs the other spirits to spread that misinformation to Rosa and the other adventurers. In daylight, he created medicine and read books. When midnight comes, he masquerades as a member of Luff. 2 months have passed. Jin was with Letsai, Ash, and Note in a restaurant, when suddenly he calls for the latter, begging to cut his hair. Based on the looks of the butler, he turned him down. Letsai, who seems worried asking why out of the blue, asks to cut his hair. He also asks if he needs money. He lends some for Jin. Jin refuses since he has plenty of cash. He reasoned that he thought he'd ask a skilled butler to help him out like Note. He also doesn't like his hair cut by the people at the bathhouses. Jin looks at his own hair when Ash says that his hair is clean and quite fair. It would be a waste to cut. Jin thought there's nothing special about his hair. The latter seems embarrassed when Letsai told him he was good at birth and he must stay his hair longer since it's popular nowadays. Jin's eyes widened when an idea came in his mind, to shave his head. But he was shocked when Letsai told him that he would help him cut his hair, just don't shave it. It looks like he can read his thoughts, since they've only known each other for a short period of time, but he is sharp, or he was just easy to read. Then the butler suggests hiring a servant, but Jin doesn't like it since he will pay the servant just for handling his hair. Later on, Chris and Dean arrive. They seemed happy because it's been so long since they all gathered. Letsai happily greets them, while Jin looks irritated because the two have always been noisy. The butler asks Dean how their work was on the field. The latter replied that they are with 3 gold ranks. Amadio is pretty strong, and he meshes well with the 2 others, while Chris stated that he's quite jealous of their spirit weapons, hoping he can have a spirit weapon one day. He also added that anyone can get a spirit weapon, but if it doesn't like you, then it's basically useless. But when one can properly use the abilities of the weapon, one can be said to be loved by the weapon. Jin was surprised, so he plans on doing some extra special maintenance on his all-kill blade when he gets home. However, Dean says that Amadio's cronies just can't help themselves because they're throwing a lot of blind faith around it. Jin was surprised when Dean told them that they are now 4 heroes, and the Empire let them do whatever they want. Their intelligence gathering skills shouldn't be underestimated. Jin was surprised because it wasn't just his sister and the 2 siblings that became heroes. There's more people involved. The gods didn't say anything about it, although he doesn't have any position to ask about that. They didn't even mention his sister until the ball of light let it slip. Regardless of their abilities, heroes don't start out stronger than everyone else. They're meant to build their foundations, start drawing spirits to them, then get stronger from there. But to hear the 4 can do whatever they want, it's another issue. Ash, on the other hand, heard that spirits are less common than the further west one goes. She was curious about where the person responsible for reining them in, because even in their place, people who can see spirits are incredibly rare. The butler also added that the last appearance of heroes was 300 years ago. There's a lot of things about heroes that they didn't know. They continued their conversation, but Dean cut them off, since it was serious stuff. Anyway, Jin was terrified when Dean pointed at him for a head-to-head to see who can drink the most. He also added that if he wins, he will take Jin to the Moonlit Manor, but if the latter wins, he has to tell one of his secrets. Chris, who was curious about Jin's secret, excitedly joined. He bet that he'll introduce Jin to Heavenly Bliss if he loses. Jin didn't know what the Moonlit Manor and Heavenly Bliss was, but he was curious. The latter was bewildered when he learned that the 2 were brothels when Letsai mentioned it. Anyway, Jin said that he doesn't care about the bet, but he asked Chris to use his name instead of calling him Twilight. Ash agrees and asks to call her by her name as well. Jin notices the seriousness of both the butler and Ash. It's inappropriate to talk about brothels in front of her since she was a girl. However, Note's face changed when Ash told them that those brothels aren't high class at all. Later on, Chris and Dean were drunk. The butler didn't join join in their bet, but Let's I caught in the crossfire. Now he has to get the 3 in their house. The butler was surprised because he could hold his liquor and didn't get drunk. Thanks to his healing power, he's just a little bit tipsy. Then the butler asks him to look for Ash because he's going to clean up the place. Jin agreed and noticed that she was already drunk. It's rare, but she was indeed drunk according to the butler. Then Ash stood up and started to walk. That's why Jin didn't know if he should follow her and stay behind or help to clean up. But to his surprise, he restrained Ash because she was going to walk into a wall. Although Ash told that she was fine, well, she was not, since she was completely drunk. So Jin held her hand and guided her to walk outside, because if he doesn't do anything, she will bump into the wall. While walking, Jin's hand was on Ash's shoulder, but the latter didn't say a word, so Jin asked her if there was something wrong. His eyes widened and her face turned red, but it quickly changed and furrowed her brow. There was something she wanted to say about brothels and Jin's hair, but something was also holding her back. Jin was perplexed at their conversation, but he was surprised to notice that Ash's face really softened. Even her shoulders have been more slender as well. Those dazed eyes from drinking. He wanted to tell that she shouldn't get drunk in public, but he couldn't find a single word until they came home. Morning came. Jin was working a flower while thinking about what happened to his friends last night. He was sure that the boys were all fine, but Ash was a little drunk the other night, so maybe he can whip up something good for Ash's hangover. So he went to her house and asked how's her feeling, but it looks like she was not feeling well. He told them that he brought some bread and sausage to help, but it seems that is what not Ash needed. She was aching for her stomach and wanted to vomit, so he asked permission to use their kitchen and prepare a warm drink with ginger and citrus syrup. Ash finds it spicy at the same time. Sweet. Jin reminds her to take it easy and drink plenty of water. After she was feeling better, Jin was happy and waved goodbye, but Ash suppressed him. Since she has a promise to take Jin to a bow of spirit, she asks to do it after her hangover subside. Jin was surprised that she still remembers it, since she mentioned it when they first met, so he agreed and the butler let him know when Ash was feeling better. The next day, Jin and Ash were walking when he suddenly asked if she was feeling better. He noticed that Azu seemed to be happy and enjoying himself, not like Ash, who was still frowning as usual. Further, Jin told Ash that he's been once there in a bow of spirit in Canaan to buy some water to use for medicine when she asks if it's his first time visiting the place. It was also the place they went to remove the influence of Dean's sister's spirit. Then, they arrive in front of a house. The Bow of Spirit is the most prominent building in the town plaza. That seems to be the case in every major city, not just in Canaan. They went inside and Ash guided him where the workroom and the courtyard was. Jin widened his eyes when he saw the Bow of Spirits. The Bow of Spirits refers to a branch gifted from the king's bow. According to Ash, the place where the branch rests is called the Bow of Spirit. It was common knowledge, so Jin wanted to know more. He hasn't done any further reading on the Bow of Spirit yet, because he prioritized learning about the spirits and the history of the world. However, she continues and says that Azel doesn't have a king's bow, so the one in Canaan is just a lesser bow. But Jin was confused if that branch is just imitation or fake, and then fell on his thoughts. Ash, on the other hand, looks irritated when she notices that Jin was not paying attention to what she was blabbering, yet she continues to explain everything. Then Jin noticed that she found out about his ignorance about spirits. Then, he remembers that when they first met, he already made it known that he had no idea about the Bow of Spirits. Nevertheless, she continues and says the Bow of Spirits is less powerful than the king's bow, but it has a similar effect. It's difficult to make it to the king's bow and keep the subsequent oaths one must make. Breaking one's oath will result in both the king's bow and the Bow of Spirits to disappear. Shlumtis, Pasteur, and Marina are the 3 nations that have inherited a king's bow. Jin was surprised when she mentioned the kingdom of Pasteur, since it's the place where her sister was sent, so he asks if the Kanam's a lesser bow, if it can still function. Ash agrees and explains that by offering magic stones, a field of magic that's comfortable for spirits made, a temple can create those branches, but it's quite taxing. Jin wanted to say something, but a girl caught his attention. She has a basket with stones on her arms. Then she placed the stones on the basin. He was curious how long those stones sustain those spirits, and the magic stones are rare and quite expensive. So, he asks Ash if they cannot just maintain the field without magic stones. She says that the person and the type of stones offered will affect the spirits that appear, but without stones, the magic would dissipate, and the bow would disappear. Then a spirit passed by him, approaching the basin. Then it played in the water, and turned the water into holy water, which is then used elsewhere. Ash told him that he should see the Bow of Spirits at night, because instead of a water basin, they light a fire. The cinders produced are great for smithing, and the ashes, once scattered over earth, result in better harvest. She also told him that she can show him around some other time. He agreed and presumed that it was a night date, but it was Ash, so it doesn't give off the feminine vibe. After that, they were both surprised when Azu suddenly flew and swam on the basin along with the spirit, but it suddenly flew in Ash's hand. Jin admires her because whenever she isn't frowning, she's quite the beauty herself. Later on, he roasted something on the ground, and was delighted since it was roasted to perfection, and his fields are coming along nicely. He planted a variety of different plants from both that world and the pantry. It's too bad the vegetables from the pantry only grow in the mountains. He was not sure if he's proficient enough to artificially cross-pollinate those. Then a spirit suddenly flew over the peas. There were also cabbages and Italian parsley as well. It's interesting interesting to see different types of spirit gravitate towards different crops. Then, he noticed where Richie was. He looked around but was bewildered when he found the puppy approaching an onion. He was worried and wanted to stop, since dogs can't eat that because they might get sick. But he was horrified when Rudiel suddenly appeared, claiming Richie is not a dog. The latter stood beside him while staring at the dog. He hopes he still has some amount of affection toward Richie, since the puppy used to be their leader. Based on Rudiel's face, he must have a lot of thought to unpack about him. When Pal and Ish arrive, they find his vegetables lovely. He was grateful at the latter because he was watering the fields for a while, but he was amazed when Pal walked through the strawberries. It was growing from the place where she walked. He looked again at Rudiel, who was still staring at Richie. He found an idea to catch his attention. He asks the three if they want to try some of the vegetables. Recalling they can taste it if they're interested in the subject matter, he picked some and gave it to them. They took the food. Ish and Pal were delighted, since it was delicious and quite fresh. He was full of joy because the two can taste the vegetables, then planned to make it a dish. When he looked at Rudiel, he started to taste some onions and commented that it was sweet. He was curious if Rudiel liked the taste of the onions because of Richie. Inside his house, Jin heard a knock. He hurriedly opened the door and was glad to see Ash, the butler, and Letze. That day was the housewarming party for his new house. Letze let out a sigh because Jin drove him like a slave driver, painting 2 whole houses. Ash thought Note went through a lot, but it all thanks to Letze. Jin is technically the owner. He just asks the butler to handle things. He'd bet any potential tenants for him, if only just for Ash's sake. His brother, the Duke, might make a move on them, since they ended up escaping. They've left that country since that accident, and nothing has happened since then. But the butler said she was targeted multiple times in that country. Then, Letze was delighted that he would stay in the house for a cheaper price, since John allowed it, and the butler immediately decided to rent it out to Letze. The latter let out a sigh of relief, because after the first expedition, the prices went up, and thought he was boned. But if he were to buy a house, it would be one he'd stay for the rest of his life. He was glad to have a cheaper rental until that happens, but he seems surprised when Jin asks if he was going to hunt a wife after buying a house. Letze seems embarrassed, and claims that was not yet on that stage. It seems Ash didn't understand the conversation, and asked if Letze bought a house. That means he was looking for a wife. Later on, the first floor has the living room, the bathroom, and a room for storage. Letze found it amazing that the house has a bathtub, and the bathroom is walled off too. Jin looks terrible on how that world has their toilets out in the open, and many toilets are just pots and holes in the ground. So he reminds Letze of his conditions in renting the house. He must bathe at least once a day, and remember to clean the place out twice a year. Letze agree and praise him for being amazing, because they were working so hard in that house, but then Jin completed it all by himself. Well, it's all thanks to his power, because he already installed a bunch of things in his storage, and asked some help from the spirits. Of course he couldn't say it. Instead, he told Letze that he was pretty fit. After that, they went to the second floor, which has 3 rooms. Letze found a bed, so he abruptly sat down to test. Jin was confused when Letze suddenly lay down on the bed, claiming it was completely different from a straw bed. Jin didn't want to put in a straw bed because that might attract insects, so he reminds him again to air it out every now and then. On the other hand, the butler and Ash wander around the house. The latter found a door, so she pushed to check the inside, but the door didn't move an inch. The butler told her not to push, since it was a sliding door. She was amazed, because it lets one open the door from either side, and one can even see from room to room. Jin stares at her like a child, sliding the door back and forth. Then, Jin told Letze that there's no tenant in the 3rd floor yet, but it's the same as the 2nd floor. The ground floor is a common area with some storage, and just as Letze liked, they come with locks, so he can keep his weapons there. The latter was delighted, but his eyes sparkled when Jin announced that the tour was over and they shall launch. The 3 were looking forward since his cooking is always brilliant. Jin seems content to see them lively, and it makes him happy too. Jin cooked for them, and they couldn't help but to start to dig when they saw how delicious it was. Jin finds it always exciting to see their reactions, because that world's cuisine is all about boiling and roasting. He does some twisting from his own world. He made a gratin with morel mushrooms. They're technically poisonous, but once you cook them through, they're edible and go well with cream and sauce. False morel mushrooms are similarly poisonous, but one has to boil them for too long to remove the poison. Yellow morel was also poisonous. One needed good ventilation when boiling it with water. It's passionate how the Japanese are about their food, eating poisonous things. But Jin didn't think that the world was ready for that yet. However, they continue to praise Jin for his cooking, about how delicious the cream and the soup is because it's a homemade consommé. After a while, Letze says that he loves a drink. Although Jin has wine, it's pretty light. He offers them the dessert, a chiffon cake, because Letze might insist on getting the wine. They were bewildered by its intriguing texture, fluffy, delicate, and soft. Letze, who seems hesitant to taste, says that sweets are usually preserved or cooked hard. Jin thought that Note and Ash's looks were equally the same when he offered them the Castella pancakes. Sweets are pretty rare, and they're usually quite heavy. According to Letze, they usually only get to have sweets made by artisans during special holidays. It's a luxury most people would rather make bread than sweets. Ash also added that Kanem has had a recent influx of maple-flavored sweets. There's even a dedicated pastry chef in Naladade. Jin thought that maple syrup was a specialty in the capital. It's not exactly cheap, it's still available to purchase, so he took out a bottle of syrup syrup and offered them, but the two men decline. It seems Let's likes savory flavors more, while the butler has a lighter and more mild palate. Only Ash looked like sweets a bit too much. Later on, two children of Dinoso seem to be in trouble. The older girl is protecting his younger brother against two men. They wanted the girl to shut his mouth. Jin, who was hiding in a tree, saw everything. It's been a while since he last saw the Dinoso family, which is why he was curious about what's happening. Anyway, the two men was threatening the girl that if she doesn't listen to them, who knows what will happen to their father. The two were about to grab them, so the girl closed her eyes in horror. But to her surprise, the two men were lying on the ground and were beaten up. They were bewildered to see Jin, so they rushed towards him and hugged him while they were crying in horror. Jin asks them what happens. The girl explained that a bunch of people came into their house, but she can't continue since he doesn't know what happened to her father. She also added that she grabbed En and Baku ran to the burn. While those people were talking to her dad, their mom sneaked out and told them to run. But when they saw Baku, they caught them. She was shaking in tears, asking Jin what to do, so the latter gently taps her hair to comfort her. Then he told the sibling that he will help in finding their father, but whatever happens, they should not make any sounds. The sibling happily agreed with him. He felt a bit conflicted about the siblings. He knows families come in all different shapes and forms, but he was confused when the big sister is desperately protecting her brother, unlike his sister. Later on, they went in Dinoso's house. He saw how bad the situation is because Dinoso is on the floor, while Shiva is being held hostage too. On the other side, another man also held the Baku. It's going to be hard for him to take care of all of them at the same time. But he was surprised when a blonde-haired man mentioned the king of wolves, Balmor. If he could remember, Dean was a fan of Balmor, the reason for being an adventurer. Then the man hit Dinoso on the ground, the reason why the girl shouted and called for his father. Then Jin rushes towards the man who was holding Baku and gives it a hard punch. The blonde man was still holding Shiva while a sharp sword was on her neck. Then Shiva formed an evil smile and suddenly gave the man an elbowed chest. That's why the man coughed blood and released his sword. It's a chance for Shiva. She took the sword, then attacked the man from behind. Jin was surprised that she was that strong. Shiva was not yet finished. She attacked the blonde man and pierced his own sword at him. Jin seemed terrified when he saw how strong Shiva was. The blonde man was a skewered clean, yet he was taken out so quickly. He was bewildered that Shiva really did those attacks, but he saw the entire thing with his own eyes. The siblings rushed towards their mother in joy when they saw that it was over. She looks relieved while she hugs her children. Dinoso, on the other hand, was furious, shooting at Shiva to untie him since he was still on the ground. Later on, Jin put some bandages on Dinoso's bruises. The latter told him that it was not as bad as it looks, since he was evading the worst part of it. Jin wanted to say something, but hesitating. Dinoso seemed to sense it, so he told him that he had a spare potion. The latter apologizes for dragging him into such a situation, then drinks the potion. In his thoughts, it was Jin's second time seeing someone actually die, but in the midst of the chaos, his wife deals with their attacker. Shiva and their children seem fine. She showed a complete level of resolve and knocked out the blonde man, and if they do have a match, he doesn't think he could win against her. Jin was in deep thought that he didn't notice. Dinoso was talking to him. He apologized and half smiled because of the sudden seriousness of Dinoso. But to his shock, Dinoso claimed that En has a storage skill. Jin thought it was just a joke, so he didn't take it seriously. His two children, who were eavesdropping, suddenly came and proved that En can fit an entire desk or 10 bags of grain into his storage skill. Nobles would kidnap one in the blink of an eye if they knew. Jin still half believed it, since he also used storage, although no one knew. It's fine for merchants, but it's dangerous when you consider that you can smuggle weapons and the like with impunity. Dinoso explained that En was blessed by spirits and acquired the storage skills. They were in a temple, so people immediately found out. They've been after them ever since. Jin says that it was a tough situation. Then he was surprised when he noticed that two siblings were packing up, so he asked if they are leaving. He became sad because he was going to miss them, but to his surprise, Dinoso told him that they will head to Kanem. They were not going to run anymore, because Shiva and him used to be adventurers and pretty famous. After that, Jin thought that it's the reason why the gods recommended him to go to Kanem, since it's a place with the least amount of interference from the aristocrat and the temples. Then Dinoso tells him that Shiva is from a noble family, then became an adventurer when they elope. As adventurers, they can hold their own. They stopped 4 years ago when En acquired his storage skills. He continues that adventurers work in the open, and it's easy for people to discover their whereabouts, so they stay in remote areas for 4 years. He wanted his kids to be able to fend for themselves in case anything happens to him or Shiva. They are going back to their old line of work because they are more proficient at animal husbandry and hunting. En and Baku will be 8 soon, and he'd like to expand their horizons. However, Jin was still surprised because he thought that they were ordinary family farmers, but he finds Dinoso a really great father. Later on, Dinoso offers him money, a compensation for the potion, but Jin didn't want to take it. That's why Dinoso burst out in anger, so Jin didn't have a choice but to accept the money. Then he noticed that Dinoso was splitting the money into smaller bags. The latter's reason is to make sure they will all get to Kanem safely. In case they split up, the kids can hire an adventurer to take them to Kanem. It's quite a lot of money. They must have saved up over years, so Jin offers to help take the kids to the Kanem. On the other hand, Shiva interrupts them, wanting to say something but couldn't continue when she saw the potion. So Dinoso Dinoso quickly stood up, says that Jin gave him the potion. He also asks his wife to make something to eat before they leave, then walk outside to take care of something. Jin thought that Dinoso was talking about the bodies outside because they can't leave any evidence behind. However, Shiva apologizes to Jin if they surprise him with their situations earlier. Although the latter was a little bit shocked, he didn't mind. Then he stood up and told Shiva that he will handle the meal so that she can help her kids to pack their things, and maybe Dinoso and her could portion the food they were taking along. Although bewildered, Shiva was so thankful for having Jin. Later, Jin was done cooking. The three siblings along with their parents dropped their jaws, because his cooking is wonderfully colorful and looks delicious as always. Baku and En's eyes were sparkling in joy when they took a hold of their food. The girl says that she will also get better at cooking than look to Jin, and on the side laughs at her, while Dinoso seems irritated, claiming his cute Tina isn't going to marry anyone. They all laughed at the father. Jin finds it an odd conversation. He was wondering if he'll be able to hear those banter in Kanem. They start to dig in. Tina asks how far the Kanem was. She became sad when Dinoso told that with no setbacks, they will be there for about a month and a half, because they might never see Jin again. Tears wanted to run on her cheeks, but Jin quickly taps her head to comfort, telling that he will see them around. Then the twin interrupts, asking for their tap too. So he came to them and did the same. After that, Dinoso told him that they will settle down in Kanem for a few years, then they will probably head out to a dungeon. Jin looks happy to hear that. He almost forget that gods did mention dungeons in the previous. Later on, En shouted that he couldn't fit their luggage inside his storage. Jin came to check the problem. According to Baku, En's storages are full, so Jin looked at En's storage because he too didn't know how the storage works. Then he saw a squirrel spirit on En's shoulder. His jaw dropped when he saw that the squirrel swallowed up the last bags that En was holding. After that, Jin looks closely and found that Dinoso is followed by a fire dragon spirit. His wife is accompanied by a female ice spirit. It seems the two and En have contracts with spirits. After a while, it's time for them to go. Jin offers to accompany them in the Kanem, but Dinoso declines, because it's a good opportunity for them to travel as a family. But he was shocked when Dinoso called him Mr. Luffy. He also says that he came to their place in the middle of nowhere without a horse, so it sounds a bit suspicious. So Jin explained that he was not a people of Luffy, although he was a bit suspicious. Dinoso just laughed at him. Their journey might be a bit tough for their kids, but they can handle it. Dinoso has got some idea of how strong Jin was, but he doesn't want to depend on his strength where he can do it himself. Jin looks sad when the family gets on their horses. Before they leave, he shouted that when they get to Kanem, they head to the streets near the back of the fox. Then they waved their goodbyes. He thought Dinoso was right. It wouldn't be quite right to cheat and use his transfer magic, so he plans on making sure the family has a great meal and hot bath waiting for them when they arrive. He was looking forward to seeing them again. For a change of pace, Jin was walking at the Gill Rock to the southeast. They say there's an archaeological site at the highest point of that abandoned city. He encountered a few monsters on his way. On his way, he was not aware that there's someone staring at him, that someone couldn't recall how long it has been since a human went into that place. Jin was surprised to hear that voice. Though it's dark in the place, he can sense that there's something beyond that darkness. The voice plans to devour his heart, brain, and liver, which is why Jin was alarmed that he got himself in a real difficult situation. So he created a light in his hand. He was in panic when he saw not just one pill bug, but many. He notices that they are running away because of the light. He wonders if those bugs are the one who's talking. So to test, he grabs a stick and pokes the bugs. One of them looks hurt, so it threatens him that they will devour him. But Jin didn't stop and continued to poke those bugs. He was bewildered when they told him that they are descendants of spirits oppressed by the people of fire. To survive, they possess that body. So Jin assumes that they are black spirits that possess those pill bugs. According to the bugs, humans who came to that land, through their ears, they devoured them. They didn't feel a thing when they ate their brains and gave them knowledge. But Jin just laughed at them and thought it would be fine if he would exterminate them all, which is why those bugs seem worried and find him wise like a sage. Out of the blue, Jin asks them if they have a leader. According to the bugs, they are not just parts, they are whole. Though they move as individuals, they think as one. He was surprised when a bug interrupts and says that if there is a leader, it should be him. The bugs were massive and shiny. There's no tainted spots on its body, like one found on a monster. Its color is completely homogenized and free of imperfection. It's probably a higher level of monster. So he asks if it's a bug too, then put his hand on it to form a contract, which is why the leader was mad. So Jin apologized to them and said that he just had to form a contract with them. He also sympathizes with their hunger, but he requests not to attack humans. Pill bugs seem hesitant at his request because for them, it's a threat. So he explained that if humans come into their territory, they can do what they have to do. At the same time, they don't have to go out of their way to help them out either. He was surprised when pill bugs stated that as long as one of them remains, they will grow and grow. It means that those monsters are more dangerous than he thought. They keep coming back unless he kills them up to the last one. They also asked to supply them with his magic power. In that case, their hunger for eating humans would decrease. He was bewildered if it's his liberation skills, to be able to free spirits from other things, which is why they want his magic power. If they can't eat humans, they will eat monsters. Though it's not as tasty as humans, it's still good. If they are hungry, they will hunt monsters. They continue on saying that they were strong and can continue continue to grow, then they vanished. He couldn't believe that he did form a contract with something he shouldn't have. He assumes that he will never see those bugs again. After that, Jin is with his friends, claiming he was a savior since it's basically impossible to find a house that's fully furnished. According to Chris and Dean, having a bed and great storage is the best. The butler brought them in as new tenants. Let's say, on the other hand, was surprised when Jin told him that his friend is bringing his family to Canaan soon, so he asks to keep their eyes on them. Let's say thought Jin disliked people and never thought he had friends. The latter just didn't like his sister's friends, and not all people. In his world, most of the people he knew also knew his sister, so he's not really beating the allegations of disliking people. Anyway, his friends find him a good person, so Chris promised when his friends arrive, he will show them around town. Then the butler asks Jin if he will leave the third vacant. The latter told the butler not to worry about it, since they've got kids and might want to stay in a place where they can make some new friends. But since the area had not many kids, Dean says that it's a bit inconvenient for them. Then Note says that there's 3 people from the gold-ranked party that decided to stay near the center of the town. It seems a lot of people are looking to stay in the safer and more central parts of the town. Monster broke through the city wall near their area. Ash says that if there's an emergency, Jin's friends can stay on their 3rd floor. They all look at the butler when he says if they empty out that block behind them, so he changes his sentence and says that he is going to purchase the land. Jin was confused because one is only allowed to purchase 2 houses around their area. Jin was right, he already purchased his own abode and the rental houses, so the butler will buy it. Then he whispered something to Jin that surprised him. Haruka, Jin's sister, is with a man named Hisatsugu. It looks like she was living in a palace. While having a drink, she asks the man where Yuka is and if she's still copped up with Jin. The man stood up and walked toward her, claiming there's no need for Haruka to worry, because Yuka was just enthused about her first love with her younger brother. The man also added that she has him. She knew she had him in Fatin, but she was just worried that Jin doesn't trust women, since she was the only woman who stood by him. Hissa continues to comfort her while caressing her hair. He says that his sister chose Jin as part of her powers, so he can't do anything about it. He also added to refrain mentioning other men when they were alone. They're just puppets that can read memories, and her brother is still in Japan. Haruka can't help but to worry because Namina says that only those with short lifespans are summoned, so the same must go for them. She suggested if she should try to take Jin with them because she was sure he misses her a lot. She's wrong, because the only wish Jin had on his mind was to be forever apart from her. Anyway, according to Hissa, Haruka was now younger than Jin, so basically, the latter was now her older brother. For Haruka, a little brother is always a little brother no matter what. However, when Haruka first met Namina, she was asked what she desired. She replies that she likes to be able to use all magic, a power to rule that world. She also wants to maintain her youth and good looks, but it looks like it was impossible, since her lifespan is too short to be able to add many skills. So Namina offers to take some mental resistance for a start, but she declines it. Furthermore, Haruka, Yuka, and Hisa received youth and beauty. The latter also received swordsmanship and ability reinforcement. But Yuka's wish is for Jin to become stronger and to hate his older sister. The last time Haruka and Yuka had a conversation, the latter admitted that she was not sure if it's a good idea to confess with Jin, which is why Haruka was furious, claiming that she was the only one who can see Jin for who he really was. So she wishes to set Jin free from his dominated older sister. It's been a month and a half since the Dinoso family left for Kenem, so he was renovating the new house for them. He was doing a lot of renovating lately, but it looks like he was worried that the family won't like it. While drinking tea, someone knocks on his door. It was Dinoso, but he suddenly covered his mouth before he could say something. The reason why is he seems to want to surprise his 3 kids. He turned to Shiva to go inside before talking more. The latter reminds her children to lower their voices because they are visiting someone else's home. Then the 3 children were shocked to see Jean in front of them. Anyway, Dinoso let out a sigh and confronted Jin, because it might be too suspicious and not to tell anyone of their arrival. The latter says that his friends already knew their arrival since when they arrived. They would definitely find out anyway. They look around and ask if that is his house. To their surprise, he told them that it's one of his houses, which means there is more. Shiva interrupts and asks Jin straight when did he first come to Kenem, and how long should they pretend to have known him. Jin replied that he met them in autumn of last year, or spring. Shiva agreed and told them that they have known him for about a year. Then she calls her children and reminds them that if anyone asks, they tell them that they have known Jin for a long time, but don't tell them about the exact date. The siblings happily agree with their mother. Afterwards, he asks the family they have eaten. When the kids heard him, they all couldn't wait to eat if it was him who did the cooking. Dinoso agree with his siblings. Then he asked the parents where their luggage is, and if they have any place to stay. Dinoso told him that they left their horses and belongings at an inn, though he was looking to sign a 1-year lease on a home soon. So Jin offered them to take a look at a house next door. It's available to rent with a caveat, even if it's just briefly until they find another place. But Dinoso was surprised when he handed him the key. His jaw dropped when he told them that it's his house too, and was a landlord. The siblings were delighted when they heard it. They were happy that Jin will be their neighbor. After that, the family came back. Luckily, Jin was done making pinchos and small pies. It's easy to make in a pinch with jarred marinated tomatoes and mozzarella. He happily opens the door, but Dinoso couldn't believe the house next door was really amazing. amazing. Her wife was also amazed at how horses and furniture have improved. The siblings couldn't control their mouths and said that the rooms are so cute and there were 2 beds on top of each other. Jin was glad that they like it, but looked like Dinoso was not yet decided, so he invited them to eat and the latter can choose the wine he likes. While eating, Dinoso says that the caveat regarding the rentals is about the attic, but Jin was terrified because Shiva was more skilled than Dinoso because she was the one who found it. Then Jin explained about the caveat. The people living behind him have their own circumstances. He figured out it'd be good to have an escape route in case of emergency. It was the thing the butler whispered at him the other day, that he'd like to have an escape route made in the attic. After some discussion, he sold the house where Letze and the others are staying, and instead bought another house. If he is going to have an escape route, it's best to have a different owner on the other side, so it's harder to discern. Anyway, Jin went to Ash and the butler to introduce them to their family. Dinoso was so shocked to see that butler and called him a shadow wolf. Ash, who looks confused, asks Note if he knew him. The latter told them that he indeed knew Dinoso, and the adventurers used to call him that way. Dinoso has memories with the butler working with them to the bone, outweighing any notion of him being a mere butler. Then Note thanked Dinoso for the help, because it was hard to get help from outside the country. Jin on the side was confused if Note had some kind of dirt on Dinoso, and assumed that he wasn't always a butler, but he was surprised when the butler finally introduced Dinoso to Ash, being the Wolf King Balmor, who disappeared for some time, but he's a gold-ranked adventurer. Dinoso explained that he gave himself that name, and doesn't recall the name his parents gave to him. Shiva gave the name Dinoso, so he went by that until now. He also added that if the butler is sticking with Ash, that means she was the young lady. Those words surprised again for Jin, because he even knew about Ash, and that her father used a spirit to make her more manly. Dinoso found it being a hassle, living with them around, but after they saw the house, it'd be hard to turn down. He looks at his wife, then turns to Ash, and makes a deal with them regarding the house. Later on, they gave the family a tour to the house. Jin asks Shiva how did she know there was a secret passage, but he was bewildered when Shiva asked him to tap the back of the shelf because it sounds different. It's hollow. There's also a slight draft because of that hole. Dinoso notices that the building is built without a crack at all, so he asked them what would be the case. The butler was sweating, but he replied that the wind must be from openings their house. They haven't touched the attic on their side since purchasing the house. If they seal the gaps, the draft isn't issued, but when Jin took a peek in it, there was a sound when opening the door. If they close the hole, there's no getting in or out. It'd be nice if one could make the opening invisible with magic. Dinoso widened his eyes when he saw pieces of rocks falling down from the wall, and it continued to fall. To shock them even more, the door suddenly closed, which is why Dinoso became irate. He points his finger towards the butler and accused of doing those things in public again. He asks what kind of training he gave Jin. The butler, on the other hand, was so cool since he had no parts in that. To calm him, Jin asks if he wants to lay low, because his action tells the other way around. Then his wife taps his shoulder, telling that she will check on their kids. Another problem came when Ash suddenly asked what he was trying to hide, or from whom. Jin says he was just trying to hide his abilities, because it might catch the attention of someone troublesome, but on his mind, mostly about his sister, since he was separated from his sister, and as long as gods are stronger than Namina, he will be fine. Ash furrowed her brow because it's okay for Jin to find them about it, but he didn't think that the more people know, the more likely someone else finds out. Jin didn't know if she was worried or angry. He explained that rumors die off quickly, as long as he was not directly talking to them. They will forget about him, so he got a special constitution for that kind of thing. Ash gets him. He just simply knocks out any people who are digging into his affairs. That is also the reason why the butler couldn't find a trace of Jin at the commercial guilds. That's why the butler finds it strange that Ash and him were noted in relation to the medicine they had sold. Jin also says that he lacked in a few areas, so he stayed away from group activities in general. Jin was astounded when Dinoso told him that there was something off about his physical prowess. Spirits don't go to him at all, to the point of absurdity, because he can see spirits. It's true that all of them can see spirits, even Dinoso's wife as well, but he was wondering if N can see them as well. He let out a sigh of relief, since it seems like it might be dangerous to have many people around there that can see spirits, but his eyes widened when they pointed out that he should be more careful and the most likely to be targeted, like he was the most dangerous person there. Dinoso commented that he can fend for himself. If he made a contract with a spirit, they can accompany him. He finds Jin strange because he's so strong without any spirit. The butler disagrees because some people lose their ability to see spirits when they stop adventuring too. Jin admitted that he made a contract with spirits, but he doesn't want to expose it to any outside influences. Since the spirit was super cute, he didn't want it to be abducted by some weirdo or influenced by another strange spirit. The butler reminded him that normal people cannot touch spirits, which is why he was speechless. So he plans to ask Richie later, because the puppy might not be able to answer him directly, but he was able to express his opinion another way. Later on, he went home and quickly looked for Richie. The puppy rushed towards him the moment it heard his voice. He gently squeezed its face, because for him, among all the spirits he had seen, the puppy was the cutest. Then, he suddenly remembered something, so he quickly asked the puppy if it would be okay with following him out into the world, since there'll be a lot of people out there. The puppy didn't reply, and seemed like he was just talking to a wall. He was happy to have the puppy with him, him, but he didn't want to force it, so he asks again if it doesn't feel like they could try some other time. Richie didn't reply again, and just wagged its tail. Jin brings Richie into the other world. Chris and Dean dropped their jaws when they saw how adorable the puppy was, so he knelt down and wanted to touch it. But the puppy suddenly stops, as well as Dean, because it's Jin's rule not to touch the puppy. His friends felt different emotions. That time, he was supposed to cook for them, a thanks for the food they gifted him, and could socialize Richie with them. Then someone suddenly knocked at the door, and Dean guessed that it might be the family that Jin mentioned before. The butler opened it, and Dinoso was shocked to see many people at Jin's house. He explained at him that he have many mushrooms, so he decided to invite some people, while the butler abruptly says that he had no parts on Jin's plans. Dinoso looks crazy while holding his head, blaming himself for what he said earlier. They both agree, but that wasn't something they could have foreseen. Jin looks confused, so he asks what is he talking about. Then Dinoso pointed at Richie. He looked terrified, asking if he had shown the puppy in public. When he found out that Jin already introduced it to the others, he seems frustrated, asking what he have done. Jin looks irate, because Dinoso was the one who said to bring a spirit along with him. He was shocked when he learned that there's no such thing as a dog that doesn't leave behind a footprint. There are spirits that are visible to people who can't see spirits. Richie was incredibly strong and always just kind of been there. The puppy was so frail and weak in the beginning, even though he's still strong. It could cause commotion if he takes it out of public. He squeezed the puppy's face because he knew it didn't want crowded places, so he was clueless on what spirits should he taking around. Ash suggests to return Azu on him, but he declined, because he feel better if Azu is there to watch over her. Chris promises that he will do his best to ensure his trust is not misplaced. An idea comes to Jin's mind when Letsia says that adventurers are usually accompanied by fire spirits. He once had that dragon following him around. His thoughts suddenly stop because he didn't introduce each of them, so he introduced Dinoso at them. It looks like Letsia knew him, so he apologized. Then he asked Dinoso if he was Balmor. They were all shocked when Dinoso admit that he was it. Ash, on the other hand, seems couldn't understand the situation since Balmor, King of Wolves, is missing in the dungeon, so Dinoso explained that he'll be active again starting tomorrow. Chris also introduced himself, but Dean seems uneasy because he was a fan. He didn't know how to offer his hand and was acting weird, because Balmor is just that famous. Only incredibly estranged people would have never heard of him. Jin didn't know about it, because for him, Dinoso is still Dinoso, a loving husband to his wife, and a father to his kids. Then the latter gave him the bread that he was carrying the whole time. He also warned Jin not to walk around the town with the puppy, if he have any inclination of staying a low-key. Dean couldn't believe what Balmor looks like carrying bread, while Letze seems worried about the guild became rowdy. He feel like someone of his caliber should have gone back to delving in dungeons instead of the town. Dean became excited when he mentioned that Dinoso was going to train his kids. He finds him gross, being a fangirl pretty hard. Dean couldn't help it but being a fan. He's just a bit older than them, but he really made his name for himself. Ash, on the other hand, was amazed at Balmor's children. They were curious if Dinoso will train just the twins or the three. Dean still looks like a fangirl when he learned to Jin that Shiva is the name of Balmor's wife, because it belongs to the Ice Queen. Jin agreed with him that Shiva was beautiful and strong, but he was surprised when out of the blue, Ash asked him if it was his type. He didn't know either about a type of person, but one thing is for sure, he did envy the entire Dinoso family. Jin envies their relationship, not envying the members themselves. While they weren't the Farm Minge family he thought they were, they're a good family. He was so thankful to his friends when they decided to keep an eye on their kids, because Shiva and Balmor should be fine, but their kids were not. They assure him not to worry about anything, so Jin was content, because the three will do a much better job than he could ever do. Anyway, he asked the butler to give him a hand, so that they could get ready to eat, but Chris interrupts Jin and reminds him that it's not right to hold the puppy like a normal pet. Morning came, Jin was with Letze. He thanked the latter for keeping him company that day. The latter told him not to worry, but if he was really looking for a blacksmith, he'd find it in a larger city. Jin declines because they'd be all Rosa's underlings. Everything about her and Nina seems like a pain to deal with, even though many people say she's a compassionate healer. They went to a store to grab something to eat. Jin told him he wanted to make use of that magic ore that Ash gave him. He heard if the furnace is powered by spirits, the quality improves quite a bit, but the process should be the same. He quickly took a bite of the sandwich, but he was not content since the meat stinks, or maybe it was awful. He likes some shichimi in it, but it doesn't exist in that world. Letze told Jin that he had really gotten used to his cooking. It's scary how he didn't want to eat out at most places the past few days. Jin told him that he can just copy his recipes. It's a good thing that Letze started grilling meat at home and barely left the house. It's a good thing, so Jin reminds him not to forget his vegetables too. Afterwards, Jin got everything ready, so he wanted to give it a try. He asked some spirits for help, then started to put metal on the heat to make it soft. Then he uses a hammer to bend it as he desires. He noticed many sparks when the hammer and metal meet, which is why the lizard and other spirits help him. He dabbled with knives and smaller items before, but it was his first time making something larger, hence he was unsure if he could do it by himself. Soon night came. He was delighted because the sword was complete. The tip of the sword is colored differently from the rest, but it's beautiful, like a morning dawn. Then he abruptly went outside to try. He warns Richie, who was following him, to stay in its place because it's dangerous. Then he starts to slash it into the air chair and finds it cool, but he can't definitely use it. He can see in his mind how frustrated Dinoso was. He turned to Richie asking for help because it was the magic iron that Ash gave him, but the latter didn't say anything and just stared at him blankly. Then he decided to apologize to them. He went to the butler and Ash's house. The two look confused when he offers them wine and sweets as a sign of apology. He told them that the magic ore that Ash gave him, he made a mistake and it's unusable. He wanted to apologize for wasting such a gift. Ash ignored him since it was a gift for him and he was free to use it however he liked. The butler suggests that he should melt it down and reforge it. Jin was surprised because he didn't think of that, but since he was still confused if his suggestion could be possible, the butler suggests again calling Dinoso to show them his failed sword. Jin couldn't figure out, but there's something sinister behind his smile. Jin made food for Ash, the same as what he gave her as an apology hamper. He was glad when she liked those eclairs. Dinoso, on the other hand, looks sad while staring at nothing. The latter let out a sigh and asked Jin to show the sword that he forged. He lifted his hand to let out the sword. Dinoso looks irate, then asks where he took the sword out from. He said that he kept it in his storage. He was surprised when Dinoso told him that he shouldn't let anyone know about that. The butler couldn't believe that thing would be a problem, because even the bags Jin makes, which are more conspicuous, are handled through the guild. It's because Jin covered his tracks so well. Then Dinoso took a look at the sword. They commented that the sword is a beautiful piece of work and asked not to melt this one down. Then he asked Ash if she would like it. The latter abruptly said no, since she don't have a companion fire spirit, so it wouldn't be suitable for her. Aside from the fact that Azu is a green wind spirit, then he asked Dinoso and says not to be so ready to give away the sword like that. He even can't easily show it in public. Then he asked how much it cost for it and what it was made of. The butler notices that the style of the blade resembles the ones made in the northern island where they don't come into contact with other people, and those are usually made with molds. Jin explains that he hand-forged the sword by himself using the magic iron. Then the spirits present helped him forge it into a spirit sword. He also made regular knives, though those weren't made with the aid of spirits. Finally, Dinoso commented that there's nothing to be done about the fact that the sword is a spirit sword, but as long as he didn't use it in public, it's fine. Jin became irate when Dinoso yelled at him, claiming he was still in the wrong because even if it weren't a spirit sword, it's not normal to make swords like that. The butler, who looks worried, suggests Jin to set his benchmarks a bit lower. The latter refused because he didn't want a weapon that would break easily. He was not going to give up on quality of life and combat because all he wants is just to be comfortable. The butler assumes that the level of his culture and understanding dwarfs theirs. According to Ash, it was something normal for Jean that would be outlandish for them. Then Jin suddenly smiles when someone knocks on his door, but as soon as Dean entered the house, he was surprised when he saw that his idol was also there. He notices that Balmore looks in deep thoughts, so he asked Jin. The latter told him that they were trying to come to an agreement. Then he gave him a bag of white asparagus. He smiles at them and tells them not to push the issue too much and to take it easy. After that, Dean smells something, and then he asked Jin's permission to have a bite on the eclair on the table. He finds the sweets are probably worth the entire house. There are incredible amounts of vanilla beans and cacao. Even the thing inside, called a strawberry inside, is unheard of. Jin heard about the strawberry being real that Dean mentions. He was confused because there was indeed no strawberry in that world. Anyway, Dinoso told him that if it's with the ingredients he bought from outside, feel free to eat in public, but otherwise, keep it inside. But a sword is something you entrust your life to, so he is fine with Jin making it to the highest standard. He also told Jin to make a new sword, and he will keep the other and pretend he obtained it somewhere else. It's preferable for other people to have swords like that too, so that he wouldn't stand out for having one. Jin understood that he had to make a new one. He heard that the butler has his own, so he doesn't need to worry while Dean says that he don't have any cash. That's because he goes to brothels. Later, Ash furrowed her brow and asked him if it was alright with him. He agrees since she was the one who gave him the magic iron. He can do whatever he wants. Later, he plans on asking Shiva and Letsay over what attribute he should use for his own sword, and what spirit he would even take with him. Then he starts to forge different things again. Morning came, he thanked Letsay for helping him finish the bed. It was a lot of work to do it himself, so Letsay is a big help for him. While drinking tea, Letsay let out a sigh because he always finds his tea a delicious one, but it's not actually tea, it's coffee. Others don't seem to like the bitterness, so Jin personally adds milk and sugar, but drinking it black is fine too. Then Jin suddenly stood up when he remembered something. He shows Letsay 2 lamps and asks to take one as a thank you for his help. Then he shows a glass of wine and a champagne flute, but Letsay looks like not interested in anything he has shown. Whatever, he explained how he made it. In the end, Letsay asked for the butler because he had never seen glass like that. Jin was surprised because it's definitely a thing in that world since he bought a red glass before. They also said that as long as it stayed inside, it's fine. Letsay grabbed a beer mug and looked not satisfied since it was so clear and much more opaque. Jin was so sad and said that he will think about it over. Jin thought he could keep them in the kitchen or pantry, then add a door to the shelves to block them from view. On the other hand, Letsay told him that Rose's followers are starting to leave Canem, so he asked Jin to think about going on a hunt. The latter didn't reply because they've been rabid trying to recruit Dinoso. Of rumors about Dinoso, Amadio might come back to Canem. He was trying to spread rumors about the north, but Amadio might come back because of Balm Balmor. He asks Letze if Dinoso and the others would go deeper into the woods so they can disappear for a while. A plan came in his mind when Letze said that he might be a liability, but it depends where Jin was going. Jin exclaimed that he will be a great model. They can go hunting rabbits with the kids or just look after them. Letze was surprised when he found that he was taking the kids with them. The family are planning a Spartan training regime to head to a dungeon in 2 or 3 years. The family survived the long journey just to get to Kanem, and those children are probably tougher than Jin if he wasn't careful. Jin dropped his jaw when Letze told him that he was more childish than he expected. He made a lot of errors when they were around. He is going to be a real headache for Dinoso. Jin went to the Dinoso family's home. The latter looks jealous when his wife hugs Jin, thanking him for the cuts. Before it gets worse, Jin explains that he was imagining things because he gave Shiva and the butler a kitchen knife that he forged last night. Shiva invited him for dinner because her husband caught a deer when he was hunting. The 3 kids jump in knee when they find out what they have for dinner. Jin agrees because it's been a while since he has her cooking. After it was done, Shiva called his husband to cut the meat, although his wife was in a hurry because their kids were waiting. Dinoso looks hesitant when he notices the knife on his hand, then looks at Jin furiously. Later on, they start to eat. Jin notices the cream sauce goes great with the venison. Shiva was a really great cook. The side is beans with baked cheese on top. He also noticed the beans are a bit small, but they have a great color. It's a bit bitter but delicious. Jin let out a sigh because being in their house makes him want his own family. To his surprise, Tina abruptly stood up, freely offering herself as his wife. Then the twins also offer themselves as a wife and husband too. Dinoso became furious, so her wife looked at him trying to calm down. Jin suddenly smiles because it was happening again. Dinoso was not mad because they were just playing around, but they don't understand what their dad means. On the other hand, Shiva remembers Ash. She couldn't believe she was a girl the entire time. She asks Jin if the latter does the tailoring of her clothes. He replies that yes, he does the tailoring. Ash has recently gotten thinner around her waist and had to adjust her clothing sizes. He was curious if she became feminine after the spirit curse had been lifted, though Ash has probably had to work on her scary glare first. His jaw dropped because it looks like Jin forgot about the reason. He didn't come to their house just to have dinner, so he asks Dinoso to accompany Ash for monster extermination. In that case, they will go deeper in the forest. He was delighted when Dinoso said that they need to prepare the weather permit and leave in 5 days. Since Dean, Letze, and Chris all declined to join, he will ask them one more time, especially Dean, who's a fan of Balmor. He will surely join. Then they continue to eat. Jin had a premonition that things will be stirred up even before setting things out. Chapters end at 28. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you loved this manga. Have a good day.